Hey friends, tonight let's explore the curious and challenging world of medieval times, where surviving just one day was no small feat. Imagine waking up in a small, drafty stone cottage with a roof that leaks when it rains, the smell of smoke thick in the air, and the knowledge that a simple cut could mean serious trouble. You might think, well, how hard can it be? But trust me, you probably wouldn't last a day without a few unexpected surprises. So before you relax, take a second to like and subscribe if you find value in what we share. And while you get comfortable, why not drop a comment with your location and local time? Now dim those lights, fire up a fan for that cozy background sound, and let's settle in for the journey ahead. The medieval world you're stepping into isn't the polished, romanticized castle life you might have seen in movies. It's a place of rough stone walls, narrow dirt streets, and constant hustle just to survive. The air smells of wood smoke, farm animals, and sometimes less pleasant things. It's chilly most of the year, and the cold seems to seep into your bones through the cracks in the walls. Your shoes, if you have them, are probably more whole than leather, and your clothes scratch as much as they cover. Don't expect soft cotton or silk, those are for the rare and wealthy. Breakfast isn't a fresh croissant or a steaming cup of coffee, but a simple hunk of coarse bread, perhaps dipped in ale or watered-down milk. You might even find yourself chewing on some cheese that's closer to a science experiment than food. The concept of hygiene is fuzzy at best, and baths are a luxury few can afford often, once or twice a year, if at all. Imagine how that feels, the itch, the grime, the ever-present scent of the outdoors glued to your skin. Medical care. Let's just say it's a mixed bag of superstition, herbs, and a dash of bravery. If you get sick or injured, it's not a quick trip to the hospital, but more likely a visit to the village healer or barber surgeon who might use techniques that make you wince. Bloodletting was a favorite treatment because apparently draining your blood would balance your humors. Oh, and the idea of sterilization was non-existent. But hey, at least they didn't have to worry about traffic jams. Homes are small, often just a single room with a hearth for cooking and warmth. Privacy is a myth, and family members share space tightly. The floor might be dirt straw or rough planks, and a window is more likely a hole covered with oiled cloth than glass. Sounds carry easily, so every cough or creak is amplified through the quiet night. Daily life is a mix of hard labor and simple pleasures. From dawn to dusk, most people work the fields, tend animals, or practice their craft. Entertainment might mean a storyteller sharing tales by the fire or a simple game with stones and sticks. There's no internet, no TV, just human voices and the crackle of flames. Yet despite hardships, community bonds run strong. Neighbors help each other, and festivals bring moments of joy amid the toil. But beware the law breaking, it could bring swift consequences. Punishments might be strange to modern ears, a fine, public humiliation, or even forced labor. Some say justice was blind, but it often had a loud, colorful voice. Before we dive deeper, here's a little humor for you. Why didn't medieval peasants ever play hide and seek? Because good luck hiding when everyone lives in a tiny village with no doors. And speaking of smells, what's a medieval cologne, eau de manure, the scent that defined an era? Finally, what's the medieval version of Wi-Fi? The town criers shouting news you might not want to hear. So now with that mental picture painted, you have a glimpse of why lasting a day in medieval times wasn't for the faint-hearted. Ready for more curious details? Stay tuned as we wander further into this fascinating world. Now that you've settled into the idea of medieval life's challenges, let's talk about what filled your belly and kept you going. Food and hygiene. Spoiler alert, neither was quite what you might expect. Picture yourself sitting down on a rough wooden bench at the communal table. Your meal, likely a thick, dark stew made from whatever vegetables and tough cuts of meat were available, flavored, if you're lucky, with some herbs. Bread, dense and coarse, is your trusty sidekick, more often than not made from rye or barley, instead of the wheat luxury reserved for the upper class. But wait, here's a curious twist. Salt was precious, so much so that it was sometimes used as currency. If you've ever heard the phrase, worth your salt, that's where it came from. Imagine paying your rent or your laborer's wage in salt. Talk about seasoning your paycheck. And while we're on strange tidbits, did you know that some medieval folks believed eating cheese made you brave? So if you're nervous about facing your day, a chunk of that smelly blue mold might have been your secret weapon. When it comes to hygiene, brace yourself. Baths were rare, often a once-a-year event. Instead, people relied on rubbing down with cloths soaked in vinegar or herbal infusions. The idea of daily showers was alien. Water was considered dangerous for the body's natural oils. Public bathhouses existed, but were sometimes viewed with suspicion, and yes, some might have been a bit more social than sanitary. There's a whole debate among historians about how clean medieval people really were. Some argue they were surprisingly hygienic, given the era regularly washing hands and faces, while others point to the lingering odors described in writings. One intriguing theory is that many of the diseases attributed to poor hygiene may have actually spread because of crowded living conditions and lack of understanding of germs rather than simple dirtiness. By the way, here's a little medieval paradox for you. People often kept the same clothes on for weeks, but they might change their linen underwear daily, believing it was the real barrier to sickness. Makes you reconsider your laundry routine, doesn't it? And speaking of quirks, here's an odd fact: combs were used not just for hair, but also as a weapon for lice warfare. Yes, your personal grooming tool doubled as a tiny battlefield instrument. It's like a medieval multi-tool minus the screwdriver. So as you nibble on your imagined stew and consider your medieval bathing habits, ask yourself, would you trade your modern-day shower for a splash in a crowded, slightly suspect public bathhouse? Probably not, but remember, people adapted in all sorts of clever ways. 3 lighthearted jokes to keep the mood gentle. Why did the medieval baker go to therapy? Too many netty problems. What do you call a knight who is afraid to fight surrender? And lastly, why did medieval peasants ever starve? Because they were always outstanding in their field. With your appetite and cleanliness notions suitably challenged, we're ready to dive into the curious world of medieval medicine. Next, brace yourself for some truly eyebrow-raising remedies. Continuing your medieval adventure, now let's dip into the world of medicine, a realm where science and superstition tangled in a dance as confusing as it was fascinating. Imagine you've twisted an ankle or caught a nasty cold. Your first stop, likely the village healer or barber surgeon, a figure part doctor, part barber, and full-time jack of all trades. Unlike the clean, sanitized hospitals, you know their clinics are often crowded with curious onlookers, pungent smells of herbs, and a hint of blood or worse. One popular treatment of the time was bloodletting. Yes, the idea was to balance your body's humors by draining blood, assuming your illness came from having too much of it. While it sounds scary and frankly a bit counterproductive, it was considered cutting-edge medicine. Tools ranged from lancets to leeches, those tiny but efficient bloodsuckers. Imagine letting a leech loose on your skin, its suction stronger than your will to stay still. But here's a quirky side note. Medieval doctors also believed that the position of the stars and planets influenced your health. They'd consult astrological charts before prescribing any treatment. So if you weren't feeling well, blame it on Mercury being in retrograde. This celestial connection invites a debate among scholars. Was medieval medicine more a spiritual practice than a scientific one? Some argue it laid the groundwork for modern medicine, while others say it delayed real progress by clinging to myths. If you think medicine was all bad news, consider the use of herbal remedies. Plants like willow bark, our natural aspirin, and honey with antibacterial properties were staples in treatments. The mix of practical knowledge and superstition paints a colorful picture. Just don't ask for antibiotics. They wouldn't exist for centuries. Let me share a few gentle laughs for your bedside. Why did the medieval doctor carry leeches? Because they were the original blood bank. Also, what did the patient say to the barber surgeon? Cut it out. And how did you know if a doctor was good if he didn't run away screaming first? Remember, despite the odd methods, people did recover, or at least hope to. The blend of observation, trial, error, and faith kept communities alive through tough times. It's a world of both frustration and wonder, showing how far we've come, and maybe how some ideas like astrology still sneak into modern wellness trends. Part 4, let's move on to something a bit closer to skin. Literally, the clothes you wear and how you keep or don't keep yourself clean in medieval times. Picture this. Your outfit isn't a carefully chosen ensemble, but more a practical necessity, often passed down or patched so many times, it tells a story of survival. Linen and wool were the fabrics of choice, rough on your skin and heavy when wet. And don't expect daily washing. Your clothes might go weeks or months between cleanings, mostly aired out rather than scrubbed. Here's a strange little fact: some people believe that washing too often was unhealthy because it opened pores to disease. So instead, they'd sprinkle themselves with fragrant powders or wear layers to protect from dirt. Think of it as medieval dry shampoo, but for the whole body and clothes. Imagine the scents: a mixture of herbs, smoke, and well less pleasant odors mingled together in a not-so-subtle symphony. Now, medieval fashion wasn't all dull, especially for the wealthy. Bright colors and elaborate embroidery showed status, while common folk wore simpler earth-tone garments. But here's the catch: many dyes came from plants and insects, creating colors that faded quickly or even caused skin irritation. So the quest for a fashionable outfit was a battle against fading colors and itchy fabrics. And here's an odd debate among historians: did medieval people really smell worse than we do now? Or is that a misconception fueled by our modern noses? Some scholars argue that without modern chemicals and deodorants, the natural scents might have been less harsh or simply different. It's hard to say if your medieval neighbors smelled like roses or more like a barnyard. To lighten the mood, why don't medieval peasants ever lose at hide and seek? Because their clothes always announce their presence. Also, what was a medieval cologne called eau de livestock? And why did knights never wrinkle their clothes? Because they wore armor to cover it up. So the next time you complain about laundry day, be glad you don't have to deal with hand-washing itchy wool with cold water or hiding your natural scent from curious noses. Medieval clothing and hygiene were practical, quirky, and sometimes downright funny in their own way. Part 5. Imagine now stepping inside a medieval home, if you can call it that. The typical living space is a single multi-purpose room with rough stone or timber walls, a dirt or plank floor, and a hearth crackling in the center. This hearth isn't just for cooking, but also the primary source of heat, filling the air with smoky warmth and a faint aroma of burning wood or peat. The smoke often had nowhere to go, so it lingered indoors, coating walls and leaving a constant haze, a far cry from your modern filtered air. Privacy. Not really a thing here. Everyone sleeps, eats, and works in the same space, often on straw mattresses spread on the floor. Curtains or wooden screens might offer some separation, but sound and scent travel freely. Imagine trying to get a good night's sleep with the whole family, animals, and the occasional visitor, all in one room, plus the occasional creak or whistle from the old wooden beams above. Bathrooms were, to put it mildly, minimal. Most people relied on chamber pots, which were emptied outdoors or into the street. Public latrines were rare, and often just pits with wooden seats open to the elements and neighbors alike. Hygiene was sacrificed to practicality, and the medieval saying, "Don't shit where you eat," was more an aspirational motto than reality. Here's a quirky historical tidbit. Some homes had something called a garderobe, a small projecting room or hole in the wall that acted as a primitive toilet, often leading waste directly outside or into the moat below a castle. Fancy, huh? You might wonder about the smell, but hey, it kept things somewhat separated. A debated question for the scholars: how much did medieval living conditions really contribute to health problems? Some argue cramped, smoky, and unsanitary homes worsened disease spread. Others say community care and natural resilience balanced things out. Either way, your lungs would certainly have noticed the difference. A little humor to warm the room. Why didn't medieval folks ever get lost? Because their homes smelled like a beacon. Also, what's a medieval alarm clock? A rooster crowing in the same room as you. And finally, why was privacy so rare? Because everyone had open floor plans way before it was trendy. So as you picture your medieval shelter, remember it's a cozy, smoky, crowded world that shaped daily life, blending discomfort with the warmth of shared moments. A far cry from your quiet bedroom, but full of stories to tell. Now let's settle into the rhythm of medieval daily life, a mixture of hard work and simple pleasures that defined your existence. Your day likely begins at dawn, greeted not by an alarm, but by the crowing of roosters or the first light slipping through a cracked window. After a quick meal, you head out to tend fields, herd animals, or work as a craftsman, whatever your trade might be. Expect physical labor that leaves your muscles sore and your clothes dust-covered by sundown. Entertainment, however, isn't absent. It just looks different from today. Instead of streaming videos or concerts, people gather to share stories, sing songs, or watch traveling performers like jugglers and minstrels. These moments provide not only amusement, but also a vital sense of community. Imagine a crackling fire, faces lit by flickering flames, and the soothing sound of voices weaving tales, an ancient version of your favorite podcast. Here's a curious detail. Medieval people played games like Nine Men's Morris, a strategy board game that dates back thousands of years, or engaged in simple sports like archery and wrestling. Festivals were big events featuring dancing, feasting, and contests breaking the monotony of daily toil. These breaks were essential for morale, reminding everyone that life, despite its hardships, had moments of joy. Now, a classic debate among historians: was medieval life more brutal and joyless than we think, or did people find happiness in their close-knit communities despite the challenges? Some argue that modern perspectives overemphasize hardship, while others point to the frequent hardships as overwhelming. The truth likely lies somewhere in the middle. Life was tough, but sprinkled with laughter and connection. For a bit of fun, why didn't medieval peasants ever get bored? Because every day was a new adventure, mostly involving dirt. Also, what did they call a bad day? Just another Monday without the coffee. And lastly, how did they relax? By sitting down and pretending their aching backs weren't screaming. So as you settle into this peaceful storytelling moment, imagine the balance between the hard work of medieval days and the small celebrations that brought lightness to life. It's a reminder that even in the toughest times, humans find ways to smile and connect. Now that you're settling into medieval life, it's time to meet the law and its sometimes quirky ways of keeping order. The medieval justice system might surprise you with its mix of formality, public spectacle, and downright strange punishments. Imagine standing in the village square surrounded by curious neighbors while a judge reads your sentence. Justice was swift, and the community was often part of the courtroom crowd, sort of like the original reality TV. One popular punishment was the pillory, a wooden frame where offenders were locked and exposed to public humiliation. Passers-by could throw rotten vegetables or worse, and your neighbors might give you a nickname that stuck for life. Then there were stocks, whipping posts, and for more serious crimes, imprisonment in cold, dark dungeons. The idea was as much about deterrence as about justice. Make an example, and others think twice. Here's a curious tidbit: sometimes trials involved ordeals like carrying hot iron or being dunked in water to determine guilt or innocence, based on whether you survived unscathed. It sounds like medieval trust fall, but with higher stakes. Scholars debate how much faith people had in these ordeals, with some viewing them as symbolic rituals rather than literal tests. Now, a light moment. Why did the medieval thief avoid the pillory? Because it was a real pain in the neck. Also, what's the medieval version of a traffic ticket? A public shaming and a fine paid in chickens. And finally, why didn't judges ever play hide and seek? Because good luck hiding with a robe and wig. The medieval legal system was a blend of practicality, superstition, and spectacle, often more theatrical than fair by modern standards. Yet it reflected the values of the time, emphasizing community order and visible consequences. As strange as it seems, it helps shape how societies view justice today, reminding us how far we've come and how the past still influences the present. As we move deeper into medieval life, let's explore the role of religion and spirituality, a force as central as the hearth fire in every household. Imagine the village church, a place not only for worship, but for gathering news and sometimes even markets. Faith shaped how people understood the world, explained misfortunes, and found comfort amidst hardships. Life was often seen as a journey guided by divine will, and the church's influence extended to almost every aspect of daily living. Here's an interesting detail. Medieval religious festivals were vibrant events filled with music, dancing, and colorful costumes, much more like a community party than a somber ritual. These occasions provided much-needed relief from the monotony of labor, where believers could celebrate and feel connected. A curious academic debate centers on how much religion controlled people's lives versus offering them hope and purpose. Some say it was a tool of power, while others see it as a genuine source of comfort and community. Either way, spirituality colored the medieval mindset deeply. A few gentle jokes to lighten this sacred topic. Why did medieval monks always carry a pen? Because they wanted to write their sins away. Also, what's a medieval saint's favorite type of music? Gregorian chant, of course. And why didn't people play cards at church? Because the stakes were already heavenly high. Religion in medieval times was complex, part discipline, part celebration, and all woven into the fabric of society. It's a reminder that faith in many forms has long been a source of strength and solace for humanity, even in the roughest times. Stepping further into the medieval world, let's talk about the animals around you, the faithful companions, helpers, and sometimes nuisances that shared your life. Domesticated animals like dogs, cats, horses, and chickens were vital. Dogs guarded homes, cats kept vermin at bay, horses carried goods and people, and chickens provided eggs and meat. The bond between humans and animals was practical, but could also be affectionate. Here's a curious fact: cats in medieval Europe were sometimes viewed with suspicion, linked to superstition and witchcraft, leading to tragic misunderstandings. Yet they remained beloved by many for their pest control skills. Meanwhile, dogs varied from loyal hunting companions to the village's watchdogs. An amusing academic question arises: to what extent did animals influence medieval culture beyond their practical roles? Some argue they shaped folklore, art, and even social status. For example, owning a prized hunting dog could signify wealth. For a touch of humor, why did the medieval cat sit on the computer to keep an eye on the mouse? Also, what's a knight's favorite animal? A steed, of course. And why don't chickens tell secrets? Because they're afraid of being exposed. Animals were more than just background characters. They were part of the medieval story, influencing daily life, economy, and culture. Their presence adds warmth and humor to a world that could often feel harsh and unforgiving. Now let's peek into the bustling world of medieval trades and markets, where your daily survival also depended on bartering skills and mastering a craft. Picture a crowded market square filled with the sounds of merchants hawking goods, the scent of fresh bread mingling with animal odors, and the colorful stalls displaying everything from textiles to tools. Your livelihood might depend on a trade learned from your family: blacksmith, weaver, cobbler, or potter. Here's an odd little detail: some trades were quite specialized and strange by today's standards, like gong farmers who were responsible for cleaning out cesspits. Not the most glamorous job, but absolutely necessary for keeping towns functioning. Imagine their work clothes, not exactly something you'd want to try on. A lively debate among historians asks, how rigid was the medieval guild system? Did it allow social mobility, or did it trap people into fixed roles? Guilds controlled training standards and trade secrets, often keeping outsiders at bay. On the other hand, skilled tradespeople could gain respect and sometimes wealth. To lighten the mood, why did the medieval blacksmith become a great musician? Because he knew how to hammer out a tune. Also, what's the best way to sell shoes with soul? And why don't potters ever get stressed? Because they know how to take things in stride. One fascinating example is the medieval wise woman, a healer using herbs and folk knowledge to treat ailments sometimes viewed with suspicion, but essential to community health. Their contributions spark a debate among historians. Were these figures marginalized healers or the backbone of medieval medicine? A curious question arises: how much did these lesser-known individuals shape medieval society compared to their more famous counterparts? Some scholars argue their impact was profound, but underappreciated. For some lightness, why didn't medieval painters ever win arguments? Because their points were always sketched out. Also, what did the merchants say when asked about profits? Let's keep it under wraps. And why did the wise woman carry herbs to leave a good impression? These stories remind us that history is not just the tale of rulers and battles, but also of ordinary people whose lives quietly shaped their world. Let's take a moment to appreciate the lives of medieval women whose stories often remain in the shadows, but whose roles were vital and complex. Imagine a day filled with endless chores, cooking, cleaning, caring for children, and managing the household, yet also marked by moments of strength and influence within the family and community. A surprising detail is how some women took on roles as merchants, landowners, or even healers, stepping beyond traditional expectations. These exceptions spark debate among historians about the true extent of female agency in a patriarchal society. Were medieval women more empowered than commonly thought, or were their opportunities strictly limited? For some light humor, why did the medieval woman bring a ladder to the market to reach new heights? Also, what's a medieval woman's favorite exercise running a household? And why didn't knights compete with women? Because they knew who really ruled the castle. Understanding women's lives in medieval times enriches our view of history, highlighting resilience and adaptability often overlooked in grand narratives. Now let's wander into the medieval kitchen, a place where the day's meals took shape amid smoke fire and sometimes surprising ingredients. Imagine a large hearth with pots hanging over open flames, the air thick with aromas of herbs, roasting meats, and baking bread. Cooking was a skill passed down through generations, blending practicality with a dash of creativity. One odd detail: medieval cooks sometimes used unusual spices like long pepper or grains of paradise that might surprise your palate today. Preserving food with salt, smoke, or vinegar was essential, especially before refrigeration, giving dishes a distinctive tang. Recipes were often guarded secrets shared within families or guilds. Here's an intriguing debate: how sophisticated was medieval cuisine? Some see it as rustic and simple. Others highlight the complexity and variety, especially in noble households. Either way, food was a source of comfort, status, and sometimes adventure. A little fun. Why did the medieval cook go to therapy? Too many emotional stews. Also, what's a knight's favorite meal? Sirloin steak. And why didn't peasants ever starve? Because they had plenty of porridge. The medieval kitchen was a world of flavors, smells, and rituals, reflecting the culture and challenges of the times, and reminding us how food connects us across centuries. As we approach the end of this medieval journey, let's explore travel and transportation, how people moved in a world without cars or airplanes. Imagine dusty roads, horse-drawn carts, and weary feet as the main means to get from village to village or town to town. Travel was slow, uncomfortable, and often risky due to weather bandits or rough terrain. One unusual detail: some travelers used pilgrim badges as both souvenirs and protection charms during their journeys to holy sites. Carrying one was like a medieval version of having a lucky charm dangling from your backpack. And inns offered rest, but varied widely in comfort. Some were cozy, others less so. Here's a scholarly question: how did limited transportation shape medieval society's economy and culture? Some historians argue it fostered strong local ties but limited exchange. Others say it encouraged innovation, like improved road building and the growth of trade fairs. For a bit of humor, why didn't medieval travelers ever get lost? Because everyone knew the mile markers were just guesses. Also, what's a knight's favorite mode of transport? His trusty steed, of course. And why didn't they have traffic jams? Because there were too few roads to cause them. Travel in medieval times was a test of patience and endurance, but it connected people, ideas, and goods, laying the groundwork for the bustling world we know today. As we come to the close of this slow stroll through medieval life, take a moment to reflect on the remarkable resilience of those who lived in a world so different from ours. Their days were filled with challenges, yes, but also with community, faith, and moments of joy that crossed the barriers of time. You've journeyed through smoky homes, strange medicines, curious laws, and hearty meals, all parts of a life that, while tough, was lived fully. Before we say goodnight, consider this gentle thought: the medieval world may seem distant and strange, but it reminds us how humans adapt, survive, and find meaning in even the humblest of circumstances. Their stories whisper through the ages, inviting us to appreciate the comforts we enjoy today. Now dim the lights, imagine the soft crackling of a hearth fire, and let your mind drift with the echoes of ancient songs and tales. Rest easy, knowing that you've traveled far tonight without ever leaving your cozy spot. That's the story for tonight. May your dreams be filled with wonder and peace. Hey guys, tonight we're going to follow a medieval farmer through an entire, utterly average day. No knights, no dragons, no revolts. Just mud marginal breakfast options and one very opinionated cow. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, I'd love to know, where are you listening from tonight and what time is it there? Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. It starts before sunrise, always. You wake to the sound of the rooster Reginald as your neighbor insists on calling him, though no one asked. His crowing isn't so much melodious as it is slightly smug and irritatingly punctual. You shift under the wool blanket, which smells faintly of hay and whatever your cousin spilled on it last Lent. The straw mattress underneath pokes your shoulder blades, reminding you that it's time to face the world. You swing your feet to the earthen floor, where your toes are immediately greeted by a chill that feels like it's been holding a personal grudge since last winter. The fire in the hearth has died down. Of course it has. You promised yourself last night you'd bank the coals better, but you also promised you wouldn't let the pig into the kitchen again, and look how that turned out. You stumbled toward the door, still wrapped in your rough linen nightshirt. Outside, the sky is that early heavy blue that threatens either dawn or more rain. Probably both. You open the crooked wooden door and take your first breath of fresh air, damp moss cow, and the faintest trace of your neighbor's cabbage stew from 3 nights ago. Ah, home. As you walk toward the livestock, shed your feet, squish into the mud like it's trying to hold on to you. It's not even proper mud. It's more of a gritty soup made of dirt, water, and broken dreams. You pass the stone pile you've been meaning to turn into a fence since last harvest. It hasn't moved, neither have you. The fence project remains more of a philosophical idea than a structural reality. You open the gate to the shed. Marjorie the cow blinks at you, slowly chewing, with the patient judgment only cows can manage. She doesn't move. You suppose she's waiting for you to fetch the hay first? You suppose a lot of things about Marjorie, that she harbors resentment about the lost clover patch, that she knows more than she lets on, that she may in fact be plotting against you. You haul a scratchy bundle of hay into her pen. Your nose fills with dust and the not unpleasant musk of livestock. The wooden rake you use is splintery, probably older than your youngest sibling, and threatens to give you blisters before breakfast. You do it anyway. Marjorie seems vaguely satisfied. You glance toward the pig pen. The pig, no name, just the pig, is already awake, rooting noisily. You don't like to admit it, but part of you respects the pig. It has no job, no taxes, and still gets fed. A lifestyle icon, if you're being honest. Now back inside, you find what passes for a breakfast waiting for you on the table: yesterday's bread, hard enough to chip a tooth, and a cup of small ale that tastes like someone whispered the idea of hops into a bucket of water and then forgot about it. You eat, you chew, you consider dunking the bread in the ale. You decide against it because you once tried that, and it just made both things worse. Here's your first truth of the day: most medieval peasants did eat bread and ale for breakfast. Small beer, to be precise, not strong enough to get you tipsy, just enough to purify the water and numb the pain of existence. Congratulations, you're authentically miserable. And here's your strange but true fact: in some regions, farmers saved up bacon grease to rub on their shoes to make them more waterproof. You do not have bacon. You do not have waterproof shoes. You have regrets. And now the debate: were medieval peasants actually miserable? Or have we just romanticized their resilience through a very modern lens? Historians still argue. You're too busy prying bread crust out of your molars to participate. Outside, the sun is hinting at existence behind a curtain of thick clouds. You step out back into the wet world, the earth squelching under your weight, and the wind picking up just enough to make your damp shirt stick to your back. And here it begins. The day stretches ahead, full of fields and fences and forms of physical labor no one sings ballads about. But don't worry, at least you've already won the battle of getting out of bed, which, if you think about it, is more than your cousin Bernard can say. He's still asleep on a pile of turnips, claiming it's good for his back. 3 fun facts to close the hour. Your bread is so hard this morning it might double as roofing material. Marjorie the cow blinked once during your entire speech about taxes. You took that as approval? You've stepped in mud deep enough to warrant its own zip code. And yet, despite all that, you breathe in deeply, exhale slowly, and continue walking toward the crows circling the far end of your field. They know something you don't, probably about the onions. The wind catches the edge of your tunic as you trudge toward the livestock shed again, this time with intention. Marjorie has been fed, yes, but Her Royal Highness expects company, or at least someone to stare at judgmentally while she digests. You duck under the low doorway. The smell inside is strong and familiar, a heady mix of damp wood, old hay, cow breath, and the lingering essence of old stories and livestock. The light filtering through the cracks in the planks makes thin golden beams in the dust picturesque if you squint past the flies. Marjorie lifts her head with a dramatic sniff, as if to say, "You're late. Never mind that you were here not 20 minutes ago." Cows are nothing if not dramatic historians. You grab the wooden pitchfork, its handle worn smooth by time and questionable choices, and begin fluffing the hay. It's not glamorous, but it's necessary. There's a spot by the far wall where the straw gets especially soggy, either from a leak or from the pig sneaking in at night to express his opinions. You're too tired to investigate. Your hands move automatically. Push, fluff, toss. You've done this so many times you could probably do it in your sleep. You suspect you already have. Somewhere to your left, a chicken squawks. Loudly, unnecessarily. You glance over to see it waddling indignantly past a broom you definitely did not leave in the middle of the floor. You nod solemnly at the chicken, silently acknowledging the drama it's just survived. Your sister passes by the open door humming. She's wearing the same smock as yesterday with the same grass stains, but somehow looks more put together than you do. You find this deeply unfair. You step outside for a moment to air out. The breeze catches your face, cool and damp like a wet handkerchief someone left in a stream. The sky is still that oppressive pewter gray, not quite threatening rain, but not ruling it out either. Your joints vote yes on precipitation. You return to the shed with a bucket of water for Marjorie, who sniffs it and immediately turns away, as if offended by your lack of imagination. You resist the urge to say something sarcastic. Marjorie has a long memory and four hooves. Let's pause for a historical note, shall we? Most medieval peasants, yes, even the poor ones, kept livestock. A cow wasn't just a milk machine, she was warmth butter and fertilizer all rolled into one mooing package. Losing a cow could mean ruin. Marjorie may be moody, but she's the most valuable creature on the property, besides the pig, and the pig has fewer manners. Now here's something weird. In some parts of Europe, farmers used to tie little bells to their cows' tails so they could hear when they were walking away while grazing. You imagine Marjorie with bells. She would hate it, which makes you want to try it. And here's your discussion prompt for later, maybe during lunch. Did the shared reliance on animals in peasant life foster deeper empathy with them, or was it just transactional necessity? You think about this as Marjorie releases a noise best described as existential sigh. With the chores done for now, you lean against the outer wall of the shed. The wood is rough but warm from your body heat. You pick at a loose splinter while staring at the vegetable patch beyond the chicken coop. The chickens, meanwhile, have launched what can only be described as a political coup over the compost heap. One has claimed the top and is flapping its wings like it's delivering a sermon. You half expect it to begin charging rent. You walk past them and toward the rear shed, where old tools live out their quiet retirement. There's a rake missing a third of its teeth, a spade whose handle has been replaced twice, and a mysterious object no one's quite identified since your uncle left it here after the cider incident of 1324. You don't need anything here, you just wanted a moment to breathe. You pretend to inspect a broken hoe while enjoying the relative silence. Relative because somewhere nearby the pig is grunting with poetic conviction. You hear your name called faintly from the direction of the house. You sigh. There's always someone calling your name when you've just started to enjoy standing still. You trudge back, leaving Marjorie to her brooding and the chickens to their insurrection. You don't rush. After all, the beauty of the medieval day is that it's long, repetitive, and highly unlikely to surprise you unless someone's goat escapes again. 3 fun facts for this lovely hour. The chicken in charge of the compost heap is now known as Compostina the First. You stepped in something mysterious enough to inspire poetry. You choose not to ask. Marjorie just stared at the wall for 10 minutes straight. You're mildly concerned. You pass by the well and think about splashing your face but decide against it. The water's cold and you've already had enough emotional awakening for one morning. You return to the house to prepare for your next adventure breakfast. Again, or rather second breakfast, which is just an excuse to eat whatever crust you saved from first breakfast. But for now, the hay is fluffed, the cow is unimpressed, and the day like your tunic is beginning to sag in the middle. Back inside the house is, well, still a house. Mostly stone, a bit of wood, and a lot of smoky air that never quite leaves no matter how many windows you pretend to open. The hearth flickers faintly with the stubborn remains of the morning fire. You shuffle toward it, hoping for warmth and only slightly more hopeful for food. On the rough-hewn table sits your next culinary adventure, a bowl of pottage. It's brown, it smells vaguely vegetal, and it jiggles just enough to make you question your life choices. You poke it with a wooden spoon. The surface doesn't fight back, which honestly is a relief. You sit down, exhale deeply, and begin eating, slowly, cautiously, like someone testing a bridge made of soggy bark. Pottage, if you're wondering, is what happens when you toss every edible scrap into a pot and hope it becomes something more than the sum of its parts. Barley leeks, perhaps a carrot stub if you're lucky, And on especially thrilling days, a bit of dried fish so old it qualifies for a pension. You chew and wonder if this particular spoonful contains more straw than onion, or if the onion has simply given up. Your teeth crunch something that might be a rock, might be a seed, or might be last year's bad decision. Next to the pottage, there's a small round of bread. It's not fresh, but it's not moldy either, which in this economy counts as a win. You tap it with your spoon. It makes a sound not unlike a tombstone being gently knocked. Encouraging. You take a bite and the bread holds its shape in your mouth longer than seems reasonable. Still, it's filling. And at this point, you're not eating for pleasure. You're eating to outlast the morning. You sip from a wooden cup of small ale. It's warm. Not because it was heated, because everything in this house shares the same stubborn room temperature, somewhere between cellar and tavern floor. You drink it anyway. It's barely alcoholic, which is fortunate. Your ability to navigate ladders while buzzed is limited at best. Here's today's historical truth. Pottage was a staple dish of medieval Europe for centuries. It varied from region to region, house to house, and even mood to mood. If you were lucky, it had flavor. If not, it had texture, and sometimes just a hint of despair. A curious historical side note, some cooks in the Middle Ages kept the same pot of pottage simmering for weeks, adding new ingredients as old ones vanished. It was a never-ending soup, an edible timeline, a culinary shrug. You stare into your bowl and wonder how long this particular batch has existed. If it could talk, it would probably demand better wages and a vacation. As you eat, the dog flops down at your feet. He's not your dog. Technically, no one owns him. He just exists. He goes where the scraps go. He looks at you with eyes that say, "That smells awful, but if you're offering, I'm interested." You toss him a chunk of bread. He sniffs it, sneezes, then eats it anyway. You both make eye contact again. There's understanding. There's pain. There's carbs. In the corner, your youngest sibling bangs a wooden spoon against an upside-down bowl like it's a drum. They're singing a song that may or may not be about dragons. You're impressed by their creativity, less so by the noise. You lean back in your chair and take a slow breath. The air smells of ash, pottage, and faint hope. You'd open a window, but then you'd have to explain to your mother why there's now a window where a perfectly fine wall used to be. Your mother enters carrying a bundle of something wrapped in old cloth. It turns out to be more bread. You pretend to be excited. She pretends not to notice your sarcasm. It's a silent dance, performed daily. Let's float a debate your way while you digest. Was the medieval diet as nutritionally poor as people say? Or have we oversimplified it by focusing only on the peasantry? Some scholars argue that pottage, while monotonous, actually offered a wide range of nutrients, depending on what was tossed in. Others say that's a generous reading of a bowl full of boiled beet stems. You're not sure where you stand, probably because you're too full of lukewarm legume sludge to stand at all. You scrape the last bits of pottage from your bowl, wondering if this is the same batch from yesterday. You hope it is. You also hope it isn't. You've reached a philosophical crossroads. 3 lighthearted observations before we move on. You've identified at least 3 textures in your breakfast that have no known vegetable origin. The bread tried to escape your mouth halfway through chewing. It failed, but it tried. The dog is now licking the bowl you just finished. He's either brave or just really bored. With the meal concluded, you rise from the table and stretch. Your back pops, your shoulders creak, and your soul sighs. You brush crumbs from your shirt and watch them fall in slow motion to the floor, joining their fallen brethren. You prepare to head outside once more. There's still a whole day's worth of field work waiting for you, and Marjorie's probably staring at something again. But before you leave, you glance once more at the pottage pot, still warm by the fire, still containing whatever it is. You pat it gently. "See you tomorrow," you whisper. It jiggles in response. You hoist the yoke over your shoulder. The wooden beam is heavier than it looks and just as splintery as you remember. The iron plowshare dangles from a rope, bouncing off your leg as you walk. Every step squelches. Your boots, if they still qualify as such, are soaked through with mud and something less identifiable. Possibly soup. Out in the open, the field awaits like a patient adversary. Rows of half-turned soil stretch ahead, dark and wet like a moody cake abandoned in the rain. You squint toward the horizon. The sky is a wall of cloud, gray brooding and laced with passive-aggressive drizzle. You pause to wipe your hands on your tunic, which hasn't been cleaned since Candlemas. It doesn't help. You're already covered in 3 layers of dirt, 2 of hay, and 1 of existential uncertainty. The wind picks up again, sharp, insistent, and clearly from the northeast. The worst direction, obviously. It slices through your sleeves, reminding you that medieval layering is more theory than insulation. You mutter something, not quite a curse, not quite a poem, just enough syllables to frighten a nearby crow. Time to get Marjorie. She's exactly where you left her, chewing something invisible, possibly her regrets. She casts a glance your way that could wilt cabbage. Still, she accepts the harness without fuss. You suspect she's plotting, but respect her professionalism. You fasten the yoke with slow, practiced movements. Leather straps creak. The wind whistles. A tree branch falls a little too dramatically. You glance at Marjorie. She blinks. Game on. You lead her to the field. She walks with all the enthusiasm of a teenager told to clean the chimney. Your boots sink into the soil. The plow drags behind like a sulky child being led to choir practice. You position the plow at the edge of the field, brace your legs, adjust your grip, and deliver the traditional motivational speech. Come on, Marjorie, make me proud, or at least employed. She takes 1 step, then another. The plow cuts into the earth with a satisfying wet rip. You nod. For the next 10 minutes, you slip into what can only be described as plowing meditation. It's rhythmic, exhausting, oddly serene until Marjorie stops dead in her tracks. You tug the rope, nothing. Again, nothing. You step in front of her, make eye contact. A stare-off ensues. She wins. You sigh and pull a turnip slice from your pocket. She sniffs, chews, and resumes plodding forward with exaggerated reluctance. Here's a bit of historical grounding. Medieval farmers like you used scratch plows for lighter soils. For heavier clay fields like yours, a moldboard plow was needed, along with a strong team of oxen, or in your case, one emotionally complex cow. Let's insert a fun little quirk. Some medieval plowmen sang chants to keep rhythm and motivate the animals. You hum one. Your uncle used to sing something about a goose who married a turnip. Marjorie slows. Perhaps she's offended. The wind changes again, bringing with it the unmistakable aroma of someone's latrine from the village's far side. You mutter another almost poem under your breath. The crows on the fence post nod in solidarity. Plowing continues, row after row. The soil yields reluctantly. Your arms ache, knees wobble, and your back starts dreaming of a new career. What though traveling lute player, wandering onion merchant? You pause halfway through. Marjorie stands still, grateful. You offer another turnip slice. She accepts with the air of royalty tolerating a peasant. You sit on a conveniently spine-poking rock and sip tepid water from your flask. 3 thoughts drift through your mind. If Marjorie ever writes a memoir, you're not coming out of it well. The soil smells richer today, possibly thanks to the pig's contributions. The wind is trying to say something. It's speaking in goat. Your cousin Bernard strolls by in the distance basket of moss. He gives you a thumbs up. You nod. What else can you do when moss is involved? Now, for the more scholarly among us, was medieval agricultural productivity really that poor, or have modern historians overlooked the peasantry's nuanced crop rotation and soil wisdom? You're not sure, but your back is voting for more recognition. Breaks over. You rise. Every joint protests. Marjorie exhales loudly as if to say, finally back to it. The field still awaits, muddy, stubborn, and completely indifferent to your dreams. Your hands are already sore, and you've only plowed, 4 furrows? Maybe 5 if you count the one that curved dramatically when Marjorie decided to chase a butterfly. You stare at the field, then your hands, then Marjorie, who's now chewing the exact same patch of grass she snubbed 20 minutes ago. The ground today feels especially hostile. Every push of the plow sends tremors through your arms into your shoulders, and finally into the depths of your soul. You dig in your heels and lean forward. The blade slices through another clay-thick chunk of earth grudgingly. You'd be more grateful if it didn't smell like wet mushroom and old sock. You wipe your forehead with your sleeve. Bad idea. The sleeve is wetter than your forehead. Now both are damp and lightly decorated with dirt. Medieval skincare exfoliation by accident. Marjorie lurches forward with the grace of a drunken cart. The plow wobbles behind like a canoe in putting one that might tip and bite. Honestly, wouldn't be surprised. There's a pile of stones near the field's center you've been ignoring since spring. You know it's there. Marjorie knows it's there. You've both agreed to pretend otherwise, until now. The plow blade smacks into one with a theatrical halt, like it just remembered it left the oven on. You stumble, catch yourself, and release a sound that qualifies as profanity in 4 languages, none of which have been invented yet. Marjorie glances back slowly. Her expression says, I could have warned you. You kneel to move the stones one by one. They're cold, awkward, and shaped like architectural regrets. Your fingernails turn gray. You try not to think about worms. You fail. One stone has moss shaped like a duck. You name it Sir Duckland, place him solemnly near the fence post and whisper, guard the harvest. You are definitely fine. Completely sane. Definitely. With the stones cleared, you plow on. The lines you cut aren't straight. They wiggle slightly like they were drawn by a nervous artist. But that's okay. Straightness is for show-offs and people with 2 cows. Historical checkpoint. Plowing was so central to medieval peasant life that festivals and superstitions marked its beginning. Some blessed the first furrow. Others salted it to ward off evil. You consider a blessing, but all you have is a lukewarm turnip in your pocket and a biting sense of irony. You notice tiny shoots pushing through the soil. Winter barley weeds. Last season's regrets reincarnated. You crouch, peer closer. They're thin, trembling, unsure. Like you. You pat the earth gently and whisper, you're doing great. They don't respond, but you feel a little better anyway. The next patch of field is tougher. You drive the plow harder. Your palms blister. A splinter has set up permanent residence. Your back issues a formal protest. You wonder what if you were a merchant's apprentice or a wandering storyteller or a monk. Monks get naps and wine. You, on the other hand, get windburn and a cow with opinions. Marjorie snorts loud and theatrical, then resumes walking like she invented the idea. You follow behind, step, drag, grunt. Repeat, again and again. Quirky historical footnote. Some medieval fields had names reflecting how awful they were to plow. Real ones like the Devil's Elbow, Break Your Back Hill, and Yes, No One Comes Here Twice. You look around and christen yours Mud Regret Hollow. You pause, realizing you've just completed nearly 2 whole furrows without complaining. Growth. And now, for our academic pondering of the hour, were medieval tools truly inefficient, or were they a product of sustainable ingenuity balanced with limited resources? You consider this while Marjorie chews a stick for no discernible reason. The light shifts golden beams cutting through mist, painting the mud in poetry. You stand in the middle of your crooked furrows, hair stuck to your temple shirt, stuck to your spine, and realize you've been plowing for hours and still haven't reached the tree stump you swore you'd remove last summer. It has mushrooms now. You name them. Sir Spore, Lady Lickin', Lord, I'll get to it later. 3 bonus absurdities for the hour. Your last furrow curved so much you've invented the dirt cul-de-sac. Marjorie tripped, then glared at the ground like it owed her money. You have dirt under your fingernails that spells why in cursive. You lean on the plow. It squeaks, judging you. Birds call out from the trees like they're placing bets on your stamina. You wipe your forehead again, still damp. And off you go, step, drag, sigh, plowing not just a field but another stubborn, honest hour in your thoroughly average medieval life. You decide it's time for a break, not because you're finished, but because your arms have stopped responding to instructions, and your stomach has started humming a sad little tune. Marjorie, perhaps sensing your surrender, flops down in the mud like a cow-shaped beanbag. You trudge toward the ditch, the narrow trench you and your cousin call a canal, when you're feeling fancy. In reality, it's just a shallow ditch filled with water silt and the occasional frog with unresolved trauma. But it's yours, and right now it's your lunch spot. You settle on the bank with the grace of someone whose joints no longer speak to each other. The grass is damp, your tunic is already ruined, and at this point, dignity is optional. From your pouch, you pull out a cloth bundle, today's grand feast. You unwrap it to reveal a heel of yesterday's bread and a few wilted greens. You stare at it. It stares back. You chew slowly, methodically, giving your jaw a moment to adjust. The bread is dry but not fuzzy. Victory. The greens pliable, moist, slightly offended. You add a pinch of salt from the little horn vial around your neck. It helps. Barely. You lean back on your elbows and gaze up at the sky. Clouds drift across a pale blue canvas, aimless and unapologetic. You envy them. They float. You sink. You pluck a blade of grass and chew on it, not from hunger, but boredom. It's tough and flavorless and somehow soothing. You try a second blade, it's worse. Your mouth now tastes like anxious rabbit. Historical pause. Most medieval peasants didn't eat heavy lunches. What you're doing now, a light nibble at midday, was typical. Larger meals came later after the sun had punished you sufficiently and your muscles had called in sick. Today's meal, technically gourmet by 14th century standards. Here's a peculiar tidbit. In some parts of Europe, it was believed that eating under open skies helped air out the body's humors. You suspect that's also how your neighbor justifies airing their goat cheese across half the village. Your dog, still not technically yours, trots up and sits beside you hopeful. You offer him a bit of your bread heel. He sniffs it, sighs, and lies down. Even stray dogs have standards. In the distance, someone is rhythmically clanging metal. Someone fixing a plowshare with a rock. Maybe Bernard. Maybe a ghost. Either way, not your problem. Today's academic pondering, were medieval peasants truly time-starved? Or did they enjoy more rest than modern folks assume? Some scholars argue these small muddy pauses were essential. Others say they were just intermissions between endless toil. You at this moment agree with both. You lie back in the grass and close your eyes. The air is warm, the Muong murmurs beside you, and a bee hums past your ear like a tiny disapproving bard. Marjorie snorts somewhere in the distance, possibly dreaming of turnips. Your thoughts wander, taxes, mushrooms near the old elm, whether frogs experience existential dread. You blink open your eyes and sit up slowly. Your back clicks like a drawer from a house with drafty windows and secrets. You're halfway back to the field brushing flecks of grass from your tunic when you hear it. The distinct throat-clearing cough of authority. Slow, deliberate. Loud enough to say, I want attention, but I'd like to seem modest about it. You turn. There, standing beside your half-collapsed fence and wearing the same expression he's had since the plague winter of '29, is the village chief, the village reeve, keeper of rules, collector of taxes, and allegedly knower of things. You sigh inwardly and smile outwardly, which for you means lifting one eyebrow and trying not to frown too hard. You walk toward him with the enthusiasm of someone approaching both a conversation and a dental procedure. Ah, he says, dragging the sound out like it contains hidden meaning. Still plowing, I see. You glance at your mud-caked tunic, blistered hands, and boots carrying half the field. Sharp eyes, you reply. He nods solemnly as if you've both cracked a code. The village chief adjusts his belt, weighted with 2 pouches, 3 keys to doors no one uses, and a tiny carving of St. Culpeper, the patron saint of passive-aggressive small talk. He clears his throat again. I've come to remind you, he begins, that the spring tithe is due next week. You can pay in grain or in turnips, or in labor if necessary. You glance toward your half-finished field. You glance toward your granary, more of an optimistic suggestion than a structure. You glance at Marjorie, who's found a patch of grass and is now deep in the act of pretending she doesn't know either of you. You nod. Right. Tithe. There's a pause. He rocks on his heels. His boots are suspiciously clean for someone who walks the village daily. You suspect magic or delegation. We'll also need a volunteer to help clear the drainage ditches near the chapel, he adds. The bishop's mule got stuck again. You blink. Didn't that happen last year? He stares into the middle distance, and the year before. You don't volunteer. You also don't decline. That's how conversations with him go, vague requests wrapped in the ceremonial linen. Historical sidebar. In many medieval villages, the reeve was chosen from among the peasants, sometimes volunteered, more often voluntold. He was the go-between for the lord and the people. This gave him authority, both administrative and ceremonial, frequently admired, often resented. Bonus oddity: some reeves were required to wear special hats for official duties, decorated with feathers or colored thread. Your reeve's hat looks like it once insulted a rooster and lost. He begins a tale about 2 neighbors arguing over a boundary stone, a pig, a disputed cabbage, and the metaphysics of field ownership. You nod politely, you pretend to listen, but mentally you're crawling back to your plow. He ends with a long exhale like a monk delivering truth. You consider clapping. You don't. And then, as if summoned by the gods of inconvenient timing, he asks, "How's your yield looking this year?" You pause, consider honesty, then reconsider, promising you lie. He grunts approval, you think, and produces a folded parchment from his pouch. It's your annual tally form. You're to record your estimated yield livestock status, and yes, whether you've committed any sins punishable by tax. That was a thing. Historical pondering was the tithe system exploitative, or an early form of communal infrastructure funding. Some say it sustained villages. Others call it institutionalized extortion. You stare at the parchment. It's already smudged. Possibly goat saliva, possibly not. The Reeve, confident that bureaucracy has been upheld, nods deeply. "Well then," he says, "carry on." You both stand in silence. It lingers too long. Then he turns and walks away, boots still suspiciously spotless. You glance at the form. Under miscellaneous goods, someone has already written one exceptional cow. You look at Marjorie. She blinks. You are not convinced. 3 final notes before the next hour begins. You forgot your quill, so you fill out the form by stabbing it with a stick. Legibility low. Satisfaction high. The dog has returned with a cabbage leaf. It is not your cabbage. No one asked questions. The Reeves' hat snagged on a branch on his way out. He pretended not to notice. You pretend not to laugh. You tuck the parchment into your belt, glance once at the sky, still gray, still undecided, and return to Marjorie, who is now chewing a stick with a level of commitment rarely seen in livestock. There's still half a field to plow. There's always half a field to plow. The Reeve disappears behind the hedgerow, and silence returns. Blessed, comfortable silence, the kind that wraps around your ears like wool in winter. You breathe deeply. It smells of damp bark, churned earth, and Marjorie's breath. 2 of those things are comforting. Back at the furrow, the plow has slumped like a sad punctuation mark in the dirt. Marjorie watches you with mild curiosity. You bribe her with the last sliver of that turnip from earlier. She chews it slowly like she's filing a formal complaint. The clouds have thinned. Sunlight seeps through like broth strained through an old tired sock. The mud is drying into a flaky crust, though not enough to prevent your boots from squelching. You are now simultaneously dusty and soggy. Congratulations. You grip the plow's handles and click your tongue. Marjorie moves barely. You begin pulling, coaxing, pleading, like someone trying to convince a wet log to dance. The plow lurches forward in tiny jerking motions. Each furrow is shorter than the last, each line more crooked. You briefly consider giving up and making crop circles just to confuse future historians. A bird shrieks overhead, possibly a crow, possibly a disgruntled pigeon. You glance up. Bad idea. Spots. You blink, hoping no one noticed. Mid-furrow, Marjorie stops. Dead still, not a twitch. You step forward. She's fallen asleep standing, eyes half-lidded, jaw slack, soul absent. You wave, nothing. You whisper, still nothing. You pull the rope gently. She sighs like someone remembering taxes, then resumes walking. You wonder if she's the smarter one after all. Historical interlude. By midday, most peasants had already worked for hours, rising before dawn and laboring until early afternoon. You're behind schedule. But to be fair, cabbage politics take time. Curious fact, some farmers believe talking to animals improved their temperament. Others swore by yelling. Your village is divided. You've tried both. Marjorie only responds to snacks and profound indifference. The field continues to resist. The soil is now dry enough to be stubborn, but still clings to everything you own. Your boots weigh double. Your hands are cracked. Your arms ache in patterns not previously discovered by medicine. Marjorie steps over a rock. You trip on it. She glances back, vaguely amused. You mutter a poetic string of despair. The crows laugh. Still you straighten and keep going. One row, then another. You stop counting furrows. Now you count internal curses. You're up to 8, possibly 9 if you include that thing you mumbled about the sun. Today's quiet musing. Did the rhythm of peasant farming foster mindfulness, or was it quiet despair disguised as routine? Philosophers may debate. You just want a clean tunic and a nap. You finish the row and drop the plow. Marjorie wanders off toward Clover. You let her. She's earned it. So have you. You sit on a nearby rock, wipe your brow. The breeze has shifted warmer now, carrying pollen. Spring is arriving, slowly, reluctantly. Like you in the morning, you sip from your water flask. It's warm, but it doesn't taste like onions. You call that a win. 3 amusing observations of the hour. Marjorie tried to eat your tunic string, got mad when it wasn't edible. You accidentally made a perfectly straight row. You're suspicious of it. The dog returned with a radish. Still not yours. No one questions it. You glance at the sun higher now. Shadows shrinking. There's a quarter of the field left. Maybe the hardest part is behind you. Maybe. Marjorie returns, chewing something leafy. She bumps your elbow softly. Encouragement accident. You'll take it. You stand. Shoulders sore, hands blistered, but your heart just slightly full. The land isn't beautiful, but it's yours to shape, and at least for now it doesn't talk back. Your stomach speaks before your mouth does, loudly and without manners. The sound echoes faintly across the field like a distressed goat. Marjorie looks over with vague concern, the kind that says, I hope you're okay, but I'm not getting involved. It's midday. The sun, almost visible now, filters through a gauze of mist and pollen. Your shadow has shrunk into a squat little blob beside your feet, like a loyal, exhausted pet. Time for lunch. You unhitch the plow and lead Marjorie to a shady patch near the tree line. She slumps down with a sigh that manages to convey both exhaustion and passive judgment. You pat her shoulder. She ignores you in that uniquely bovine way that says, You're a welcome peasant. Back at the house, after a short but perilous walk through sticky mud and a goose with unresolved aggression, you open the creaky door and are greeted by the warm, nostalgic smell of smoke. Your lunch sits near the hearth, or rather, what used to be lunch. Now it's a dark, flat disc, blackened at the edges, crisp in the middle, suspicious all over. You pick it up. It hisses. You blow on it. Ash drifts through the air, like a very specific snowfall, burnt wheat flurries. You take a bite. It crunches like thin pottery. You chew carefully, praying your molars remember their medieval training. The flavor is smoky, charred, suggestive of fire, and somehow, despite being mostly carbon, still doughy in the center. Science. You sip from your cup, water drawn fresh from the Gying this morning. It's warm, metallic, and tinged with what your cousin insists is natural iron. You believe him because denial takes energy you don't have. Historical pause. The medieval midday meal was usually simple, just bread, maybe some cheese if your goat was feeling generous, and water or small ale. A hot lunch that was for holidays, or for days when the bread didn't catch fire. Odd side note, when flour was scarce, peasants sometimes flavored bread with ground peas or beans. The result, a strange green tint, and family debates over whether it was innovation or mold. You take your seat, your usual stool with one leg shorter than the others, and brace your feet wide for balance. You chew with focus, the same focus one applies to opening a walnut, with bare hands, in winter. Your mother walks in arms full of dried herbs. She sniffs. Burnt again, you nod. She shrugs. In medieval culinary terms, that's basically applause. The dog trots in, tail wagging, nose hopeful. You toss him a piece of the bread. He sniffs. He barks once offended, then eats it anyway. You ask your sister if she saw the reeve this morning. She did. She says he tripped over the chapel goat and tried to turn it into a bow. This pleases you more than the bread ever could. Today's academic question: was the peasant diet nutritionally poor, or did it offer surprising diversity through foraged and seasonal ingredients? Some scholars say peasants had access to more wild greens and local crops than we give them credit for. Others point to hunger gaps and missing protein. You personally vote depends how burnt the bread is. You finish eating or at least stop chewing before your jaw locks. You sip the rest of the water. It tastes faintly of duck. You don't ask. You don't want to know. The fire crackles softly. Ashes from your bread drift into the embers, like the dreams of a chef who never was. 3 fun notes from your not-so-gourmet lunch. The bread is now hard enough to use as a roofing shingle, or a weapon. Your cup has a chip shaped like a rabbit. You name it Gerald. The goose is still outside, watching, always watching. You stand, stretch. Your sigh echoes through the rafters. Your body protests. Your stomach sulks. Your soul quietly asks if dinner might be better. It won't. Outside, the sun has climbed a bit higher. So must you back up the path back to the field, back to Marjorie, who may or may not be asleep again. You grab your cap from its hook dust, breadcrumbs from your sleeves, and step into the afternoon light with the determined shuffle of someone who is equal parts tired and full of questions. Mostly about why bread develops bark-like texture without warning. But the plow is waiting. So is the earth. And so is Marjorie. Back in the field, Marjorie is exactly where you left her, sprawled on her side in a patch of clover, snoring softly through one nostril. You envy her, deeply. But there's no time to linger. You've been ignoring the Hmong all morning, and now, like everything neglected in medieval life, it has turned into an emergency. The ditch theoretically meant to redirect rainwater from your crops now resembles a decorative mud sculpture. It gurgles faintly like it's trying to communicate distress. You grab the wooden spade and trudge toward it like a soldier reporting for grimy duty. The first thing you do is sink knee-deep into the mud. Not metaphorically, literally, with a wet thup that sounds like a bowl of stew sighing in defeat. You wiggle one leg free, then the other, and attempt to move forward with dignity. It doesn't work. The Hmong gapes at you, wide, mucky, and just a little smug. You begin digging, carving out sodden clumps of earth and flinging them aside. Each scoop weighs about the same as your self-doubt. The mud clings to your shovel like it has abandonment issues. Water trickles past your boots. Slow, reluctant. The way your uncle dances after cider. You bend down to clear a blockage and uncover the cause. A dense knot of roots twigs and something squishy. You hesitate, then poke it. It moves. You freeze. It moves again. You lean in. It's not a snake, thank the saints, just a very large, very annoyed frog. It stares at you like you've just stepped on its tax forms. You nod respectfully and relocate it to a patch of grass. It keeps glaring. You apologize. It does not accept. Back to digging. The smell is distinctive. A blend of wet moss, decomposed leaves, and medieval ambition. You breathe through your mouth. It barely helps. Historical interlude drainage ditches were essential in medieval farming, especially in soggy regions. Poor drainage, shock and crop disaster, which makes muck clearing an oddly noble if profoundly unappreciated task. Fun fact, some villages named their most troublesome muong. Yours is called Old Grumbler. Your cousin swears it talks at night. You believe him. You've heard the gurgling. Some of it sounds like Latin. After an hour of shoveling, you've cleared about 3 feet. You're streaked in brown. Your tunic now weighs as much as Marjorie. Your hands resemble prehistoric raisins. You sit back and wipe your forehead. Mistake. Again. Your forehead is now muddier than the ditch. 3 comedic observations from the trench. A worm landed on your boot and refuses to leave. You named him Gilbert. He refuses that too. Your spade handle creaks in a way that feels like a question. You decline to answer. The frog is back, with a friend. Both are watching, with judgment. Today's philosophical farming question. Were medieval farming systems inefficient, or did they reflect ecological balance? Some say low-impact methods preserve soil health. Others argue peasants just didn't have options. You'd personally like a third option, a ditch that doesn't stare back at you. You reach the halfway point and pause. A breeze stirs the grass. The sun hides behind a lazy cloud. The frogs continue their silent tribunal. You chew on a dry reed, mostly for drama, suddenly rustling from the hedgerow. You turn, gripping your spade like a confused knight. It's just the dog. He's covered in something. You don't ask what. He drops a stick at your feet and sits proudly. You throw the stick. He watches it land, then lies down instead. Classic. You return to digging. The water now flows barely, but enough to feel like progress. You imagine the plants sighing with relief. You imagine the frogs drafting formal complaints. You imagine dinner. You give the mud one final scoop and climb out joints crackling like old doors. You scrape your boots clean and wave farewell to Gilbert. He probably waves back, emotionally. Marjorie is still lounging. You approach. She glances at your muddy face, snorts, and turns away disappointed, like you've embarrassed the entire bloodline. You sit beside her. The spade rests against your shoulder like a tired flag. The field waits. The furrows aren't going to dig themselves. But for now, you've earned a few minutes. Even if your clothes now weigh more than your cart. You lean back, exhale, and stare at the sky. A bird flies overhead, looks down, probably judging. That's fine. You're busy saving the world, one ditch at a time. You decide to give your arms a break from shovels, plows, and philosophical mud. Today's afternoon task is conveniently less back-breaking, but far more soul-testing trung. Eggs. Or more precisely, figuring out where the village chickens have hidden them this time. You grab a small wicker basket from beside the shed, bent frayed, and still a little sticky from last week's plum incident, and begin your noble quest. The village bathed in early afternoon light hums with its usual passive chaos. A boy is chasing a goose, or being chased, unclear. A woman is yelling at a cow for staring too hard at her garden. Two old men are loudly arguing about beans loud enough to wake the dog napping on the chapel steps. But you stay focused. Trung, the humble, evasive miracle. You check the obvious spots first to the corner of the chicken coop, the hollow behind the firewood pile under the leaning bench that still somehow counts as public seating. Nothing. Then you spot two hens lurking suspiciously near the well. One clucks at you like you've caught her hoarding snacks. You crouch slowly, whisper sweetly, and reach underneath. One egg. Warm, slightly feathered. A victory. You nestle it carefully into your basket. It wobbles. You add a clump of hay. Problem solved for now. Historical interlude. Medieval peasants relied heavily on chickens not just for eggs, but meat, feathers, and emotional support. Eggs were precious, especially during Lent, when meat and dairy were banned. In some villages, they were used as rent payments or church offerings. Yes, you are literally carrying feathered currency. Strange side note. Some believed burying eggs at the corners of a field would bless the harvest. Others claimed stepping on one barefoot guaranteed 7 days of bad luck, or a very bad afternoon. You move along the outer bakehouse wall. A hen darts beneath a wooden cart. You follow because of course you do, and that's when it happens, squish. You look down. Your left foot is submerged in a puddle, a cold, mysterious, chicken-scented puddle, and your shoe gone. Claimed by the goo, you yank your foot free with a regretful slurp. Hop awkwardly on one leg, cradling your basket and trying to keep your medieval sock out of the worst of it. The hen is long gone, probably laughing. You limp to a rock and inspect the damage. Your shoe is retrievable. Barely. You pull it free, now heavier and possibly harboring a snail, a leaf, or a frog with a vendetta. You wipe it off using your tunic corner. Marginally better. You slip it back on. It squelches. You pretend not to notice. You continue the hunt. Behind the blacksmith's wall, beneath the herb rack, near the ruins of Old Man Edric's fence, you find two more eggs, one cracked but salvageable, one pristine, still warm like it was laid just for you. Final haul, 3 eggs, 1 compromised shoe, and mild emotional trauma. Today's philosophical question: did daily chores like egg gathering foster a spiritual rhythm? Or were they simply small, frustrating necessities disguised as tradition? Did medieval peasants find meaning, or were they just too tired to complain? You consider this as your shoe lets out another damp sigh. You pass the chapel. The reeve is poking at the bell rope. He nods. You nod back. No one mentions the cabbage tithe. 3 egg-sighting discoveries. 1 egg is slightly blue. No one knows why. You name it Clarissa. The dog follows you exactly 3 feet behind. Like an unpaid intern, a goose hissed at you. You hissed back. Victory is pending. At home, you place the eggs gently on the kitchen shelf. Your mother raises an eyebrow at your muddy leg. You raise one back. A silent exchange of, "We've both seen worse." The dog flops down by the fire. You flop onto the bench. Your shoe releases a final wet sigh of resignation. You close your eyes. Just for a moment. Letting the hearth's warmth melt the mud chill in your bones. Outside, the chickens cluck with the smug satisfaction of creatures who know where the treasure is buried. You'll be back. You always are. But for now, 3 eggs is enough. More than enough. You've barely finished wiping the last clump of mystery mud from your heel when chaos rolls in. Laughter, shrieking, and the rhythmic thunk of something solid repeatedly colliding with something else solid. That can only mean one thing: the village children have rediscovered rocks. You step outside, cautiously wary of stray projectiles and airborne pine cones. Sure enough, in the clearing, near the old apple tree, a swarm of half-feral children is deep into a game, best described as competitive object throwing with zero rules and less supervision. You recognize a few of them: your cousin's son, the neighbor's twins, and that one kid who lives by the goat shed and always smells faintly of turnips. They've built a makeshift fort out of firewood, broken baskets, and yes, that's your laundry line. You decide not to ask. In the center of the battlefield stands a noble target, an empty jug perched precariously on a fence post. The kids are taking turns hurling rocks, pine cones, and somehow a beat. The jug remains undefeated. One child squints, winds up, releases, and misses by several feet, beating a goose instead. The goose honks with righteous fury and waddles off indignant. You shake your head and approach. "What are we playing today?" you ask. "Target throwing," they shout in unison, as if that clarified anything. "Are there teams?" "No." "Are there points?" "Sort of." "Is the beat reusable?" "No, it exploded." "Fair enough." You watch for a while, enjoying the flurry of flailing arms, triumphant shrieks, and sheer chaos. It's oddly charming, also dangerous, but charming. Historical pause. Medieval children had few toys, so games relied on what they could find: sticks, stones, rags, pigs. Most play mimicked adult work: herding, grinding grain, carrying buckets. And when not playing, they were working. Childhood was brief. A curious record: one village fined a boy for hurling a rock into a priest's cabbage patch. You assume the priest deserved it. Still rules. Back to the present, one child offers you a turn. You're flattered, then mildly terrified. You accept the rock with the solemnity of a seasoned warrior. Weigh it, step forward, wind up, throw. The rock soars. The jug does not move. You, however, lose your footing. One foot hits damp grass, the other panics. Neither recovers. You're airborne. Briefly, then you're very much not. You land flat on your back with a noise between "oof" and "I'm fine." Silence. Then laughter. A lot of it. One child claps. You lie still, staring up at the sky, rethinking several life choices. In the distance, Marjorie is chewing something she absolutely shouldn't. You close your eyes and pretend this is part of a very advanced yoga flow. Philosophical pause. Did medieval play teach social norms and teamwork? Or was it just feral chaos with rocks? Either way, you've just become a legend. A few kids rush over to help you up. One hands you a dandelion. You're not sure why, but you take it anyway. You brush off your tunic, check for structural damage to your pride, then declare, "I loosen the jug for the next throw." Cheers erupt. One kid immediately hurls a pine cone. It bounces off a tree, hits the dog. He sighs and walks away. 3 delightful footnotes. Your elbow now sports a perfectly circular mud patch, like it was blessed by a very accurate puddle. That goose from earlier, it's back. With friends. You are now on a list. You may have just invented medieval dodgeball. Patent pending. You watch the kids resume their chaotic joy, shrieking and laughing. Eventually, the jug topples, not from aim, but from a child charging it with a broomstick. Perfect. You walk home slowly, back slightly sore, dignity lightly bruised, heart oddly full. The village still hums with life. The air still smells of hay sweat and unmonitored fun. And you remain the undefeated champion of falling for comedic effect. Back at the house, you limp slightly, not from injury exactly, but from pride erosion. The kind that settles in after being outthrown by a 6-year-old armed with a moldy beat. You dust off the last few blades of grass and step through the back door just in time to hear a soft clatter from the pantry. That sound only means one thing: the pig. You round the corner and catch him red-hoofed, or rather muddy-hoofed, nose deep in the egg basket. He freezes. You freeze. It's a moment straight out of a medieval morality play: temptation, guilt, and a smug pork product. Again you whisper. He doesn't move. You step forward. He bolts. Hooves slip on stone. He snorts like you're the one interrupting his perfectly reasonable brunch. He creans out the door, one egg clenched delicately in his mouth like a priceless jewel. You don't chase him. You just watch. He's done this before. He'll do it again. At this point, it's less a crime and more a tradition. History interlude medieval pigs roamed freely, snuffling through refuse, breaking into storage, and occasionally making off with ecclesiastical baked goods. They were brilliant, bold, and stubborn to the point of sainthood. One record even accuses a pig of stealing a bishop's pie. You choose to believe it. You follow the trail of muddy hoof prints across the courtyard to the stable. Inside, the pig lounges in the hay, cracking his prize on a stone with leisurely precision. He slurps it with noisy delight. You know those were tithe eggs, right? You ask from the doorframe. The pig grunts, unapologetically. This pig has no name, no clear owner. He just exists. He appears whenever food is present and vanishes when responsibility arrives. The children adore him. The reeve denies he exists. You suspect he's smarter than at least four of your neighbors. You sit down beside him, avoiding the egg puddle. He allows you a brief ear scratch, then turns away with the dignity of a minor noble. You remember last winter he dragged a whole sack of barley across the village and buried it under someone's laundry. You're still finding kernels. Some say he's saving up. Others think he's opening a brewery. Once your mother found him sitting in the hearth, just sitting, like he was waiting to be summoned. Back in the pantry, you salvage what remains of the eggs. Two are missing. You wipe down the shelves and sprinkle bay leaves in a futile act of olfactory damage control. Pig plus egg, charge, a perfume that could frighten a turnip. 3 pig facts for the anthropologist. He once opened a latch using only his snout and stubbornness. You saw it. No one believes you. He responds to whistling, but only if it's in tune. He refuses raw turnips, but will accept them, roasted lightly herb. Outside, you spot him again beneath the chicken coop, napping in the shade. Head on a log like it's the world's worst feather pillow. The chickens eye him with suspicion, as well they should. You shake your head and head toward the drying rack. Your socks are still damp from the egg retrieval incident. You clip them up one by one. From his shaded nook, the pig snorts in his sleep. You swear it sounds like laughter. The sun sinks lower now. A golden glow stretches across the village. Children's laughter floats from the orchard. Somewhere a bucket clatters. A rooster screams. You lean back against the drying rack. Your spine cracks like old kindling. You feel approximately 300 years old, but alive. The pig lifts one ear, just one. You nod at him. He goes back to sleep. All is as it should be. The village is quieting now, the sun casting long shadows that stretch lazily across the fields like tired cats. It's that golden hour when everything looks slightly more magical, even if it still smells like damp hay and someone's failed cabbage stew attempt. You step away from the drying rack, arms loose, pace slow. There's no rush. For once today, no one's yelling about missing tools, goats in the garden, or mysterious puddles forming beneath the grain sacks. You wander, past the edge of the house, past the pigs snoring like thunder wrapped in wool, past the fence where chickens preen themselves proudly, still convinced they've outsmarted you, and finally to your favorite spot, a small wooden bench wedged beneath the elder tree. It's crooked, of course. One leg sinks slightly into the soil, so you have to sit sideways to stay upright. But the view is perfect. From here, you can see the edge of the village rooftops poking up like awkward hats, smoke curling gently from crooked chimneys, laundry waving in the breeze like it's trying to start a conversation. You sit, breathe. Let your shoulders relax for the first time since dawn. The light filters through the leaves in warm blotches, dappling your tunic and catching dust motes in midair. You close your eyes for a moment and just listen. Birdsong, distant clucks, the rhythmic creak of a cartwheel near the smithy, and beneath it all, the faintest hum of insects preparing for nightfall. This moment, short, simple, mostly silent, is rare, and you know better than to waste it. Today's truth nugget. Despite the popular imagery of nonstop toil, medieval peasants did carve out small, meaningful pauses. At dusk, on feast days, while chewing slowly under a tree. These were not luxuries, but necessities. Soul maintenance. A curious detail in some regions, families kept sunset benches outside their homes where elders would sit and watch the fields go quiet. A humble ritual passed down not by scripture, but by muscle memory. You run your fingers along the bench's rough, splintered surface. It's held together by a nail you definitely didn't put there. Someone else sat here once. Someone will again. Probably the pig. He finds everything eventually. You pull a bit of twine from your pocket, no reason, just habit. You twist it idly around your finger, making nothing in particular. The light catches the frayed ends, turning them gold. Your sister walks by balancing a pail of laundry. She gives you a look that says, "Must be nice," and keeps walking. You nod. It is nice. Briefly. You pluck a blade of grass and chew it, not for flavor, but for tradition. It tastes like bitter salad in the memory of wet boots. Quiet. Question of the day. Did moments of stillness like this help medieval peasants remain resilient? Or were they just small illusions of peace in a life ruled by obligation? You don't know. But here, with the evening air brushing your face and your hands finally still, you don't feel oppressed. You feel suspended, like the day is holding its breath. Three tiny observations from your peace perch. A cloud overhead looks exactly like Marjorie lying down. Marjorie, coincidentally, is lying down. A bee lands on your knee, inspects your stitching, and flies off unimpressed. Someone sneezes loudly 3 houses over. You reflexively say, "Bless you," though no one hears. The sun dips lower, casting orange streaks across thatched roofs. You hear someone singing faintly, probably old Rewilda. Her voice is cracked but comforting, like a lullaby wrapped in burlap. The pig waddles into view at the edge of the yard, dragging a turnip top like a trophy. He sees you. He nods. You nod back. No words needed. The sky darkens by degrees. The air cools. You exhale long and low. You don't want to move, not yet, but you know you must. The fields are waiting. The chickens will need herding. Dinner still needs boiling, or whatever counts as boiling, when your pot has a hole in it. But for now, under this tired elder tree on this leaning bench, you are simply sitting. And that, in a world of digging, shouting, feeding, scrubbing, and duck chasing, feels like a quiet miracle. You finally stand up from the elder bench spine, clicking like a worn-out latch. The light is slipping quickly now, soft orange fading into indigo. The sky shifting from, "Ah, so pretty," to, "Would I even see a spoon if I dropped it?" You head back toward the house, where the smell of something vaguely edible drifts from the open window. It smells like root vegetables, smoke, and maybe onion. You're not sure, but your stomach perks up like a squirrel detecting a nut in the breeze. Inside, the hearth has come alive again. Flames flicker, gently licking the bottom of the hanging pot suspended by a rusted iron hook. Your mother is stirring it with a long wooden ladle. She doesn't look up when you enter, but she says, "Don't touch the lid this time." You weren't going to. Probably. Your younger sibling is crouched by the fire, sorting a small pile of onions. Some sprouting, some soft, all somehow still usable. They hold one up. "This one has a tail," they declare. You nod gravely. "Use it first, it's clearly trying to escape." You settle on your usual seat, a low stool shaped like it was built in a hurry, and regret it ever since. Your knees pop. Your back creaks. The smell from the pot is comforting and chaotic, like someone sacrificed a vegetable garden to feed a family and hope for the best. You join the onion work, peeling with the skill of someone who's done this more times than they can count. Onion skins flake off and cling to your fingers, fall into your lap and vanish onto the floor, future traps for your bare foot. The pot burps quietly, someone tosses in a pinch of salt, and a sprig of something green and fuzzy your cousin swears is edible. You don't argue. Arguing takes energy. Tonight's menu: turnips, wild onions, dried peas, one sad carrot that looks like it's seen things. No meat, but plenty of flavor, by which you mean salt desperation and shared hope. You pull out the evening loaf. Better than this morning's, softer, warmer, less burnt. You thank your sibling. They beam, rightfully. You break bread and pass it around. There are no plates, just hand sleeves and a quiet choreography practiced over seasons. You dip your crust into the stew. You taste. It's hot, it's salty, it's good. You chew slowly, eyes half closed, letting the warmth chase the chill from your bones. Historical nugget. In the medieval world, the evening meal was often the largest. Pottage, this exact mystery stew, was standard, along with bread, if any remained. Meat rare, unless something dropped dead nearby. Still, the food was filling, necessary, familiar. You glance at your spoon, worn smooth, slightly crooked, with a notch carved into the handle. A squirrel. Your name, both. You're not sure anymore. You tell stories while you eat. Your mother reminisces about chasing a chicken across the thatch roof. Your brother claims the Reeve once sneezed so hard he dropped a scroll into the pig trough. You tell them about Marjorie falling asleep mid-step and the goose uprising near the well. Everyone laughs. That kind of laughter that only bubbles up after long days, aching joints, and shared bread. It isn't clever, it's needed. Your sibling starts counting onions aloud. 1, 2, 3, 3.5. You raise an eyebrow. How do you get half an onion? They hold it up. It is undeniably half. Possibly less, possibly self-aware. You assign it to tomorrow's stew. Quiet debate of the night. Were communal meals more about survival, or did they create a deeper emotional rhythm where food warmth and voice filled the cracks? Luxury never touched, you can't say. But this stew tastes better with laughter around it. So maybe that's your answer. 3 observations from the firelight. Someone dropped a crust in the pot and pretended it was intentional. You respect the boldness. The dog appeared the exact second the lid was lifted. No one called him. He just knew the pig got startled by a fire pop, bumped the bench, and spilled someone's water. Nobody was mad. Too funny to be mad. You finish your bread, wipe the bowl clean, lean back, full not just of stew, but of firelight comfort and the quiet satisfaction of having made it through. Outside, the stars press gently against the dark. Someone far off sneezes. A rooster crows, late and wildly incorrect. You stack bowls, rinse what you can, leave the rest for tomorrow. For a moment, no one moves. Then someone belches. Loudly. Laughter again. And just like that, the day is sealed shut with joy. After the dishes are stacked and the last bit of onion skin swept from the floor, well nudged under the bench, for future you define with a sigh, the evening settles into its softest rhythm. The kind where no one is rushing. Even the fire seems to be exhaling. You sit near the hearth wrapped in a slightly damp wool blanket that smells like last week's laundry and last year's sheep. Your sibling curls up on the floor with the dog who sighs like an old poet. Your mother pulls out her sewing and your uncle, never one to miss a dramatic moment, clears his throat. Do you want to hear the tale he begins of Gwillem the shoemaker and his unfortunate left foot? You all nod. You've heard this story a dozen times, possibly more, but that doesn't matter. Some stories grow better with repetition, like stew or grudges. Well then, he says, settling onto the wobbly stool like a bard preparing for greatness once upon a harvest, not long after the floods but before the beet incident, there lived a cobbler named Gwillem, a man of skill, precision, and regrettably very poor depth perception. The children giggle. You grin. He could craft boots so sturdy they could kick down a tavern door, though one should never actually do that, as we'll see, and sandals so fine they made friars weep from joy or foot envy. As the tale goes, Gwillem was the village's pride and also its most accident-prone resident. One foggy morning while trimming a sole, he sneezed violently and snipped off the tip of his own toe. Left foot, second from the end. He blamed the scissors. The scissors blamed the damp. The dog blamed the priest. No one really knew why the priest was involved, but he apologized anyway. Unwilling to let a missing toe slow him down, Gwillem invented a new shoe design to accommodate his reduced digit capacity. He called it the Gwillem curve. It did not catch on, mostly because the right shoe had to match, and now everyone in town walked in small, unintentional circles. Let's pause for a grounded truth. While this tale is clearly embellished for warmth and laughter, it's rooted in real life. Cobblers were essential to medieval village survival. Shoes were not throwaway items, they were precious investments. Leather was expensive, and repairs were constant. Many peasants wore hand-me-downs or wooden clogs stuffed with straw when nothing else could be afforded. And now a strange but true fact: some medieval shoes were so absurdly pointy blame fashion that laws were passed to limit toe length. Yes, foot fashion was literally legislated. Gwillem, had he lived in the city, would have been fined for creativity. Back to your uncle's tale, he's reached the part where Gwillem tries to sell a left-foot-only boot to the Reeve. It was an honest mistake, he says, except Gwillem did not have a right boot, or a receipt, or permission. Naturally, this led to a village-wide chase involving one shoe, 3 chickens, and a rather dramatic fall into a barrel of turnip mash. Gwillem was unharmed. The Reeve's dignity, not so much. The story always ends the same with Gwilym's accidental invention of the soft-soled indoor slipper. To this day, your uncle says, wiggling his toes, "I wear only shoes that can't hurt me or anyone else." You all laugh, not because it's new, but because it's yours. Your mother keeps sewing, shaking her head. Your sibling asks if Gwilym ever married. Your uncle nods. Eventually. To the blacksmith's daughter. She made horseshoes and had zero tolerance for nonsense. They were perfect for each other. She never let him near scissors again. Evening's reflection. Were stories like these just entertainment, or were they the cultural glue teaching values, sharing memory, building myth from mud and mishap? Maybe both, maybe neither. Maybe it doesn't matter as long as someone's warm and someone's telling it. 3 final footnotes from tonight's tale. Someone just realized they're wearing one of Gwilym's designs right now. You all agree it explains the limp. The pig snorted right at the punchline, possibly in approval, possibly on cue. You found a sock behind the bench. No one claims it. It now belongs to legend. Outside, the last light has faded. The stars settle into place. The fire glows red and slow beneath the logs. Your uncle starts another tale, but softer now. People shift, stretch, murmur. Night has fully arrived. And tomorrow will bring more mud, more cows, more turnips. And if the world is kind, another good laugh. Morning aches tend to linger. And so do evening ones, especially after a day spent negotiating with soil weather livestock and your own coordination. So naturally, when your sibling trips over a stool and loudly declares their toe probably cursed, your mother goes to the shelf and pulls out the cure for all ills, Madong. Ah yes, honey, golden, sticky, slightly crystallized around the lid. Blessed by bees, endorsed by saints, and the answer to ailments ranging from stubbed toes to existential dread. She dabs a generous glob onto a scrap of linen, folds it carefully, and hands it to your sibling, like it's a sacred relic. "Put this on it," she says, "and don't lick it." Your sibling immediately licks it. You don't blame them. Let's start with a spoonful of history. In the medieval world, honey wasn't just food, it was medicine. Antibacterial, soothing, and the only sweetness in a world without refined sugar. It was used in poultices, salves, and sometimes just smeared on things until they either healed or were no longer mentioned. Your own relationship with honey is complicated. You enjoy it. You fear it. You once got stuck in it. That was a bad day. Bees were involved. You grab the jar and dab a bit onto the blister forming at the base of your thumb, an honorable wound from the great ditch battle of earlier. It stings. Then it doesn't. Then you forget it's there and pat your leg, and now your pants are sticky forever. Your cousin, hearing about your injury, arrives with a diagnosis. "You should have just spit on it." Your mother frowns. "We're not animals." He shrugs. "Some animals heal faster." She raises the spoon threateningly. He sits. From the corner, your grandfather adds helpfully, "In my day, we rubbed onion juice on the wound and said a prayer to St. Mildred." Everyone ignores him. Your mother starts recounting the time she cured a nasty cut using only honey cloth and a firm talking to. You have to scold the wound, she insists. Otherwise, it thinks it's welcome. You ask if that's medically verified. She points the spoon at you. You accept this as peer-reviewed. And now today's delightfully weird fact. Medieval medicine wasn't just herbs and honey. It was full of charms, symbols, and hopeful guessing. Some healers whispered worm charms over infections, tiny rhymes meant to coax away illness. Others swore by wrapping herbs only around the left arm or harvesting by full moon while barefoot and mildly annoyed. Academic pondering time was medieval medicine, surprisingly effective, built on keen observation and folk knowledge, or mostly harmless ritual, lucky guesses, and wishful thinking. Scholars debate. You say, "Hey, the honey helps." Back to the room, your sibling is now using the linen-wrapped toe like a puppet. It has a voice. It sounds suspiciously like the pig. You're mildly disturbed. Meanwhile, your mother is preparing a small tin of special balm, which turns out to be mostly goose grease and lavender. It smells like regret wearing perfume. You watch her work with that sacred sort of ease, no drama, no fear. Just warmth, instinct, and the quiet confidence of someone who's seen worse. Much worse. Like childbirth during a thunderstorm. Or the time the oven exploded and launched a pigeon across the garden. The fire crackles, the room hushes. Your mother hums softly. The toe puppet demands more honey. You lie back on the floor, head on a folded sack. You stretch your legs toward the hearth and close your eyes. The heat washes over your calves like a benediction. Your hands are bandaged. Your shoulders ache. Your pants are stuck to your leg. But your heart is full. 3 sticky truths from this sweet hour. The pig tried to eat the honey rag. It stuck to his nose. He is now sulking. You dropped a bit of honey into your hair. You're pretending not to notice. Everyone else is pretending with you. The dog sneezed and it sounded exactly like the word no. Your mother sits back, wipes her hands and smiles, not at anyone in particular. Just at the fire, at the moment, at the strange, lovely, messy thing that is today. You don't say anything. You just let it settle in. The honey, the hurt, the healing, the quiet, the everything. The honey has been sealed back into its jar, though not without effort. It now glistens on 4 fingers, part of your elbow, and a mysterious spot on the windowsill that no one will claim. Your sibling has fallen asleep, foot wrapped like a pastry mouth open in the universally accepted position of deep chaotic rest. You glance toward the hearth. It's nearly dinner time again. Not real dinner. No meat, no feast, just the second round of warm things in bowls that pass for evening nourishment. The pot hasn't moved since last night. It still holds the same mysterious mixture of peas, onion, and one noble carrot clinging to relevance. Your mother stirs the pot. You fetch bowls. Your uncle tries to carve bread, but mostly just compresses it into flattened slabs with vaguely slice-like intentions. The pig circles the room, one snorts and settles beneath the table like an impatient shadow. Everyone takes their place. The dog, of course, positions himself directly between you and the stew pot, just in case gravity ever works in his favor. You ladle out portions, 1 scoop, 2 scoops, half a scoop, an extra spoonful of broth for your grandfather because he's old. Let him pretend it's soup. The fire crackles. The air is warm. Your pants are still slightly sticky. You sit, elbows on knees, bowl in hands, and just like that, the towel begins. Not gossip, really, not storytelling, just noises that resemble conversation. Your uncle points at the fire and says, "You know, if you stare at it long enough, it blinks back." You nod. He's probably right. Your mother recalls how when she was a girl, the goat once ate her school slate. "That's why I never learned letters properly," she explains. "Because of that goat." The goat, now long gone, continues to shoulder the blame for many things. Missing socks, broken ladders, poor handwriting. Your cousin, who's been unusually quiet, suddenly asks, "Do you think turnips feel sadness?" Everyone pauses, then nods. Then someone says, "Only when you salt them too early." You all accept this answer. Let's ladle in a bit of historical spice. Peasant meals in the evening weren't just about eating, they were communal anchors, a time to decompress, to connect, to process the absurdities of the day. You didn't need a reason to speak, just warmth and an open seat. Fun detail: in some areas, families toss salt into the fire to cleanse the air or make it pop dramatically during stories. You try it tonight. It doesn't pop. It just smells faintly like regret. That's fine. Your grandfather pipes up with a story about a man who could talk to cows. Not just talk, they answered back. Everyone nods. Of course they did. Probably Marjorie's cousin. Now a slightly serious academic musing. Did oral storytelling in communal talking circles serve as a kind of medieval mental health care? Maybe. There's comfort in being heard, even if you're talking about emotional vegetables. You poke the stew with your spoon. It has reached that stage where every bite tastes like every previous bite. Not bad, just inevitable. Your cousin offers the last heel of bread to the dog. The dog refuses. Everyone gasps. Mark the day someone whispers, 3 things that happen before the pot is empty. Your mother says that onion wasn't in there earlier, and no one knows whether to panic. The pig farts audibly. Your grandfather blames the fire. No one corrects him. Your uncle uses the last crust of bread as a spoon, then announces he's a culinary genius. You finish your bowl, set it down, and lean back against the bench leg, eyes half-lidded. The firelight paints soft gold across your cheeks. Your muscles, though tired, have stopped complaining for now. The room is humming, not with noise exactly, but with life. That quiet domestic rhythm of breath, warmth, and the occasional bad pun. You feel it in your spine. in your toes, in the sticky spot behind your knee. Outside, a breeze whistles through the cracks in the shutters. Someone's lantern flickers across the square. An owl hoots from the barn roof. Or maybe it's just your neighbor again. He's been practicing. Inside, someone begins humming. You close your eyes and hum too. Not because you know the song, but because you don't need to. It's late enough now that the dog has stopped begging and started sighing dramatically. One of his paws twitches in sleep. He's probably dreaming of bacon, or chasing that suspicious wheelbarrow again. You're not sure. The room has thinned out. Your cousin took their bowl and disappeared upstairs. Your grandfather snores gently in the corner, his hat half off, and a spoon resting like a medal on his chest. You're still here, tucked under a half-blanket side, pressed against the low bench face toward the hearth. And that's when the dog growls. Not loudly, not urgently, but in that low, I'm pretending not to care, but I absolutely do kind of way. You raise your head. Nothing. Just the fire, the coals, the shadows shifting like gossip. Then scritch, scritch, scritch. It's faint, but you hear it. From the far wall, behind the grain sack. And it's followed by the unmistakable, deeply personal, wildly offensive sound of tiny chewing. You don't move. You just whisper mouse. The dog lifts his head, looks at you, looks at the wall, looks back at you like you deal with it this time. You don't deal with it. Obviously, you're not insane. Let's talk about mice historically, of course. In medieval farmhouses like yours, mice weren't rare. They were more like roommates. No rent, poor hygiene, fantastic escape artists. People tried everything: traps, cats, peppermint leaves, angry letters. The mice naturally laughed and continued nibbling. Some folks trained cats specifically for barn duty, chasing mice, not cuddles. But cats had opinions. Some refused to hunt. Some befriended the mice. One particularly infamous cat in Yorkshire reportedly brought home a frog, adopted it, and ignored mice completely. Back to the scritching. You toss a potato at the wall. It bounces with a thud, knocks over a broom, and startles the pig, who squeals once and then decide to nap through the crisis. Smooth, the dog says with his eyes. But the sound stops. You win, or the mouse has simply relocated to your pillow. Moving on. From outside comes another noise, a howl. Not a sharp, wolfy howl, more of a long, sad note from a very confused neighborhood dog. Your dog replies, half-heartedly, then another howl from farther away, and another. It's not quite a chorus, more like bad karaoke. You press your head back and let the strange melody wrap around the roof. It's oddly comforting, like they're all just letting off steam. You think of it as the medieval version of screaming into the void. Tonight's historical side note. In many villages, people believed that a dog howling at night meant someone would die soon. Super cheerful stuff, but not always. Some said it meant a visitor would arrive, or a storm, or just that the dog was bored and philosophically inclined. Philosophical dogs, that's a discussion we'll never finish. Meanwhile, the crickets have joined the ambience. Soft, rhythmic, like nature's tambourine. And then, the drowsy monologue of a chicken who doesn't quite realize it's not morning yet. You lie still, absorbing all of it. The small house breathes. The fire exhales. The walls creak like old knees. Every now and then the wind pokes a shutter like a neighbor testing your boundaries. And in this soft swirl of almost sleep, you wonder, is it the silence that lets us rest, or the texture of these tiny sounds? Academic musing time. Were medieval nights truly this peaceful without engines, televisions, artificial lights? Maybe yes, maybe no. What's certain is this sleep came wrapped in wool, warmed by hearths, and cradled by nightly murmurs like these. 3 things that keep you just barely awake. The mouse has returned. It brought a friend. They are hosting a tiny conference. Your dog tried to bark mid-yawn and accidentally hiccuped. He's mortified. The pig shifted in his sleep and farted, again. With musical flair this time. You don't move. You just let it all happen. Your eyes grow heavier. The dog curls near your feet. The mouse gives up on the wall and vanishes beneath the grain sack again, surely to write a poem. And somewhere out in the grass, a cricket dreams of being a violin. Though you're not dreaming just yet. but you're very close. The fire is a little more ember than flame now. It glows in that soft orange way that makes everything look gentler than it is. Even the cracked mug on the shelf seems poetic. You nestle deeper into your makeshift bedding blanket, folded tunic and a pillow that suspiciously smells like onions. It's colder now. Not biting cold, but the kind that makes your ears tuck in, and your toes wish they were holding hands. The dog sighs and shifts closer, his warmth a fuzzy heater with occasional twitching. Your sibling mumbles in their sleep. You think the words were "don't milk the soup," but you'll let it pass. You pull the blanket up to your chin, and you remember the wool. Ah, medieval wool. Scratchy, hardy, never quite dry. Farmers like you wore it constantly. Tunics, cloaks, hose, even underthings if you were particularly daring or hadn't washed anything else. Wool smelled like wet sheep and rain, because it was wet sheep and rain, but it kept you alive, especially now. That's your historical fact of the evening. Wool was a lifeline. Not glamorous, but magical in its ability to trap heat, even when damp. Some folks called it the second skin of the working man. No one called it luxurious, except maybe your uncle who once described his cloak as a portable oven of dreams. He also tried to sell that same cloak back to you for half an onion and some beet scraps. You declined. Tonight you're under two layers. One is wool, the other might be wool, or hay sewn into sackcloth. Let's pretend it's imported silk. You close your eyes. The roof creaks above you, expanding and settling as the night cools the beams. It's in these moments, these half-asleep, wrapped in scratchy comfort moments, that your mind decides it's time to think, not important thoughts. No, your brain picks now to ask, what was that weird bump in the porridge? Did the pig really wink at you yesterday? If you sneeze while chewing bread, do you become a weapon? You try to let the thoughts float past. You imagine them as sheep, fuzzy, slightly judgmental, hopping a fence. 1, 2, 3. Then one stops and asks, have you filed your taxes? And you're wide awake again. Let's distract you with a detail. Medieval beds weren't always horizontal. Many folks slept sitting up or half reclined. It was believed to help digestion and keep demons out. Not the worst plan, honestly. You roll to your side. The blanket pulls tighter. The dog lets out a sleepy boof and puts his head on your knee. You try to wiggle free. You fail. The room is quiet again. You listen. There's a soft tapping from the corner. Drip, drip. Is that water? Rain? You forgot the roof leaks. You also forgot that the leak drips right into your left boot. You whisper, wonderful. Quirky side note. Some medieval farmers intentionally placed buckets under leaks not to fix the problem, but to store the water. Free roof tea, your uncle once called it. He tried to sell you a mug of that too. 3 random things that float through your tired mind. Why are turnips shaped like grumpy old men? What if the rooster is actually an undercover spy? If socks didn't exist, what did cold feet blame for their misery? You don't get answers. Instead, your body begins to sink. Not literally, your floor isn't that unstable, but your thoughts blur. Your breathing deepens. Your left arm goes slightly numb under the dog. You don't care. The night wraps tighter. A whisper of wind crawls through the crack in the window frame. The hearth breathes its last soft sigh. You imagine the stars outside. You can't see them, but you know they're there watching, blinking, probably gossiping about you. You smile. Not because of anything in particular, just because this moment is quiet, and that somehow is enough. Somewhere a chicken misjudges the time. It's not even close to dawn. The stars are still practicing their twinkle. The moon hasn't clocked out. But that one chicken, probably Geraldine, lets out a tentative bagak. Not quite a crow, more like a sneeze wrapped in regret. You groan without opening your eyes. The dog opens one eye, snorts, and buries his nose under your elbow. Then silence, for about 8 seconds. And then bagaka kra, the rooster. Right on schedule. But who gave him the schedule he can't read? You've checked. You sit up, blanket clinging to your back like a loyal but damp friend. Your hair is a chaos of straw and secrets. Your tunic is halfway up your ribs, and your pillow has wandered off, probably to elope with your missing sock. Outside, the sky is the color of old dishwater. Fog rests over the village like a lazy sheep refusing to move. Everything is quiet yet full of the kind of suspense you usually reserve for when the pig disappears with the soap. You stretch. Your knees pop. So does your shoulder. Your back makes a sound that might require a priest. You limp toward the basin to splash water on your face. It's ice cold. Instantly sobering. Or instantly paralyzing. You're not sure which. You towel off with what might be a sleeve. Fun historical fact. Most medieval farmers didn't bathe daily, or weekly, or even monthly in some cases. They wiped, splashed, rubbed, and hoped. Communal baths existed, but they were expensive, rare, or extremely social. Think group chat, but with more buckets and fewer emojis. You look into the bronze mirror. It doesn't show details, which is perfect. You don't need details. You just need the vague reassurance that your face hasn't fallen off in the night. Behind you, the dog stretches loudly, then trots to the door like it's time, and you're late. Again. You open the door, and immediately regret it. The fog punches you in the nose with damp fingers. Your breath ghosts out in little puffs. Somewhere nearby, a cow sneezes. The ground is mush. Not quite mud, not quite soil. Just betrayal with a side of squish. You trudge toward the coop. Chickens explode out like you've announced free grain. They surround you with flaps and squawks and betrayal. Geraldine gives you the stink eye. You scatter feed. They judge your aim. You mutter, it's too early for poultry drama. Back at the house, the hearth is trying to relight itself through sheer passive aggressiveness. You help it along mostly by glaring. Then it's on to breakfast, which for a medieval farmer is whatever is left from the night before a hunk of bread, a bit of cheese, some apple slices. One of them is definitely fermenting. You eat it anyway. You're a survivor. Side note of the morning. While we often imagine medieval meals as giant roasted feasts, breakfast was often humble. And breakfast as a term didn't even exist for most peasants. You simply broke your fast when it made sense. Sunrise mid-morning after yelling at your chickens. You sit on the doorstep with your snack. The fog is lifting, revealing a sky that can't decide if it wants to rain or just sulk. You take a bite of bread. The dog licks your ear. Rude. You give him the heel of the loaf. He forgives you instantly. And now as the morning stretches its arms, you feel that tug, that farmer's instinct. It's time to move, to start again. There's no grand bell, no magic moment. Just the quiet rhythm of dirt breath and days that unfold like slow scrolls. 3 random thoughts that cross your mind as you chew. Why don't chickens blink more? What if clouds are just sky sheep? Can one become a full-time napper professionally? You decide not to dwell on answers. There's enough mystery in surviving till noon. You stand. The day is waiting. So are the fields. But maybe you'll sit here just one more minute, just until the dog finishes licking the inside of your shoe. You finally convince your feet to leave the comfort of the doorstep and return to the slightly less comforting embrace of wet grass. The fog has mostly peeled away now, clinging only to the edges of trees like shy children holding onto their mother's skirt. You squelch across the path, boots filled with the squish of ambition and yesterday's puddle. The field awaits, not in a dramatic cinematic way. It does not whisper ancient secrets. It does not sigh in the breeze. It mostly just sits there full of clumps, rocks, and a squirrel that looks like it pays taxes. Your plow leans in the corner like a disgruntled coworker. You eye each other. It seems unimpressed by your posture. You likewise are unimpressed by its lack of self-propulsion. So you start plowing again. This time the soil is less soggy, more grudging. It clumps together like it's trying to keep its secrets buried. You wrestle it into rows. Your arms burn. Your shoulders ache. Your back starts a campaign to secede from the rest of your body. But the rhythm returns. Push, heave, turn, push. And with it, the mind begins its wandering. First, you think about turnips. Specifically why they look like they're always plotting something. Then you wonder if goats have hobbies. Like, do they jump on rocks for fun or for status? Then, of course, your brain decides now is the perfect time to relive every mildly embarrassing moment from your youth. Thanks, brain. And somewhere between rows, a memory sneaks in. Of your grandmother, fingers like sticks planting seeds with the gentleness of a lullaby. She used to hum as she worked, not a tune, just hums. like the earth was a baby that needed singing back to sleep. You hum too, and for a moment the field feels less like a task and more like a tradition. Historical tidbit of the morning: medieval farmers didn't own the land. Most were tenants working for a lord in exchange for protection access and the occasional stern glance. You might own a spade, maybe a pig, but the land that was a long-term loan with strings attached, usually made of tax. And here's the weird bit. Some of those strings included paying rent in eels. Yes, slippery, wriggling rent payments. The medieval economy ran on coin grain and occasionally things that could slither away mid-transaction. You imagine handing a sack of eels to your landlord. You imagine him not being thrilled. You smile. Three stray thoughts drift through your head. If you plant a spoon, do you grow a fork? Are cows just grass-powered composters? What if the rooster has been lying to you all along? You wipe sweat from your brow with a sleeve that's already absorbed half the morning dew. The sun is climbing now, a pale yoke stretching across the horizon. The wind tickles your ears. You sneeze. The plow startles. You apologize to it. It does not respond. That's fair. You stop to rest. Just a moment. You lean against a fence post that may or may not be older than your house. The wood creaks. Or your knees do. Possibly both. Your hands are blistered. Your face is streaked with mud. You're about 14% dirt and 86% exhaustion. But the row is done. And that matters. Because a day on a medieval farm is not about grandeur. It's not about epic moments. It's about rows, one after another, until the day runs out. Or you do. You glance toward the cottage. The dog is chasing a butterfly. He is losing. A chicken is pecking your boot print like it holds ancient secrets. The air smells like earth, and sweat, and quiet. You could plow another row. Or you could sit for just 1 minute. You sit, the field can wait, so can the turnips, and definitely the eels. Midday tiptoes in without much ceremony. The sun climbs just high enough to be annoying, but not quite enough to be warm. The wind has died down, leaving behind a strange hush over the field, like nature itself has clocked out for lunch. Your stomach reminds you that it too is employed and very much underfed, so you trudge back to the cottage. Inside, the hearth has mostly forgotten its job. A few coals smolder like they've unionized and are currently on break. You throw on some kindling. It sulks, then catches. Progress. You grab your lunch, a wedge of bread so hard it could qualify as weaponry, a lump of cheese that has developed opinions, and half an onion that's trying to dry itself into retirement. And yet, it's food. You sit by the fire. The dog watches you like he's composing a symphony about your chewing. You break the bread. It resists. You chew. It resists harder. You swallow. Victory. Historical tidbit of the day. Medieval bread wasn't soft and fluffy like supermarket loaves. It was often coarse, dense, and full of mystery ingredients like bran beans or whatever was left. White bread existed, but only for the rich. The rest of us enjoyed what modern marketers might call artisanal stone loaf. As you nibble, you notice the cheese has a texture somewhere between waxy and regret. Still, it tastes sharp, salty, and most importantly, not actively trying to kill you. You dunk the bread in warm broth left over from the night before. A single barley grain floats like it's trying to escape. You eat it anyway. Outside, a bee wanders past the window like it's lost and too proud to ask for directions. You reflect on your morning accomplishments: one field partially plowed, 2 chickens publicly shamed, 1 goat thoroughly glared at. Pretty productive. But here's the trick. This is when the day gets deceptive. In the medieval rhythm, lunch isn't just about eating, it's about rest. Because the second half of the day is no kinder than the first. There's still fencing to mend tools, to sharpen vegetables, to prod, and animals to interrogate. And your feet, they're already considering mutiny. You lie back, just for a second, just to think, just until your eyelids stop twitching. The fire pops. The dog exhales. You doze. 5 minutes. 10 time becomes soft around the edges. In the half-dream, your cottage becomes a castle. Your bread becomes a feast. The goat wears a crown and delivers a speech. You applaud. Then clunk. Something outside falls over. Probably the bucket. Again. You sit up blinking. Reality returns like a wet towel to the face. You groan, stand, stretch, regret it. But still, the break did its job. Your arms feel slightly less like jelly. Your brain, while still operating at a medieval level, is at least aware of your name again. Before heading out, you drink water from the jug. It's cool, a bit metallic, and has a small leaf floating in it. Bonus flavor. You rinse your face again. This time, the water feels refreshing instead of hostile. Then you glance in the mirror. Still you. Still very much covered in smudges and ambition. And so back out you go. The sun is brighter now. The world sharper. The fields wave gently in the breeze. A cloud shaped like a chicken floats overhead. You decide not to take it personally. 3 stray thoughts while you walk. If goats wrote books, what genre would they prefer? What did medieval farmers daydream about besides softer chairs? Who decided onions were lunch appropriate? You reach the shed, pick up a basket, and prepare for phase 2. Gathering vegetables, checking fences, and making suspicious eye contact with your cows. The afternoon has begun. Lunch is over. But hey, at least the bread didn't break a tooth this time. You swing the basket over your arm and set off down the garden path, which is really more of a suggestion than a path. An optimistic patch of flattened weeds surrounded by defiant dandelions. The soil, still damp from the morning's moisture, squelches underfoot with every determined step. Somewhere nearby, a bee buzzes with the intensity of a creature on an urgent floral mission. You arrive at the vegetable patch. It's a modest sprawl of effort and survival, rows of cabbage with leaves like crumpled shields. Carrots hiding underground like shy students dodging participation. Leeks that look vaguely offended by everything. And of course, weeds, nature's freeloaders, thriving enthusiastically. You crouch beside a patch of turnips. The soil sighs as you tug one free. It comes up reluctantly, trailing a beard of dirt and looking thoroughly scandalized. Into the basket it goes alongside a few onions, a disgruntled parsnip, and a cucumber you're about 60% sure isn't a mutant. Today's historical nibble medieval vegetables were not glamorous Instagram stars. They were chosen for hardiness, not flavor. Turnips, onions, leeks, and beans, unsung heroes of the peasant diet. Spices were expensive, so most meals tasted faintly of boiled everything. But hey, at least it was filling, usually. As you weed a patch of lettuce, a caterpillar inches across a leaf. It pauses to judge you, antennae twitching. You nod politely, it continues. Unimpressed. A dragonfly hovers near your ear. You swat gently. It dodges. Offended. The air smells of crushed herbs and damp greenery, soothing, almost smug. As if the plants know they've outlived kings and crusades, taxes, and poetry. You pull another carrot. It's shaped like it got confused halfway through its life and grew in 2 directions. You respect that. Then you notice the fence. More specifically, the hole in the fence. A generous, goat-sized hole. You freeze, because you know who saw that hole, and you know who has hooves. The goat. You drop the carrot and sprint. Boots thudding, basket bouncing, regret building. There inside the potato patch, your goat. Chewing, leisurely, unapologetically, like it's a brunch buffet. You stop, hands on your knees, panting. The goat looks up, blink, chew, blink. You approach. It backs away slowly, like a magician about to vanish. You lunge. It dodges. You both perform an interpretive dance neither of you rehearsed. Eventually, you coax it back through the fence with a trail of weeds and a half-baked potato as bribe. You drag over a piece of split wood, jam it into the gap, tie it with twine. Not elegant, but effective, like most things in your life. Strange but true medieval fact, farmers sometimes used human hair or animal fat to deter pests. Apparently, creatures could smell the difference between snack and civilization. You briefly consider hanging your shirt on the fence. It smells medieval enough. You return to gathering vegetables, this time with one eye on the goat. The sun shifts, shadows stretch, birds chirp. A fly lands on your nose, then leaves clearly unimpressed. You return to the cottage basket, full face smudged with effort and self-respect. The vegetables, dirt-covered, uneven, look like they've been through things, just like you. As you reach the door, 3 thoughts pass through your brain. If carrots could scream, would we still eat them? Are turnips just introverted radishes? Do goats gossip about you when you're not around? You set the basket on the table. Stretch your back until it pops like old wood. Let out a breath that sounds suspiciously like finally. It's not glamorous, but it's progress. And in the medieval world, that counts for everything. You light the fire again, not with the flourish of a hero, but with the quiet efficiency of someone who knows this hearth better than their own reflection. The logs catch after a brief negotiation. The flames glow orange, licking at the soot-dark stones, warming your knees, while the rest of you remains unconvinced. You set a clay pot over the flame, add water from the jug, begin chopping your afternoon harvest. Turnips thunk dully on the board. Carrots squeak slightly under the knife. Everything gets tossed into the pot: last night's broth, a pinch of salt, a few sprigs of herbs so small they could be mistaken for a sneeze. Dinner medieval style. It bubbles gently, like it's telling you a bedtime story. You lean back on your stool, watch the stew blur and swirl. The cottage smells of root vegetable smoke and a whisper of garlic. Outside, the day yawns, begins to fold into itself. The sky slips into dusty pinks and gentle grays. Birds hold committee on the rooftop. Today's final historical truth. Most peasants didn't eat meat often, maybe a few times a month, unless the hens conveniently stopped clucking. Stews were the foundation of daily meals. One pot, always on, ingredients added as they appeared. Some stews lasted days, just like your best medieval shoes, forever damp and slightly questionable. You ladle the soup into a bowl. It's lumpy, it's brown, it's beautiful. You eat slowly. Every bite is warm and real. The turnip still tastes like turnip no matter how long it's cooked, but it's soft enough now to chew without crying. After the last spoonful, you sit back, belly full, brain fuzzy with fatigue. You open the door. The moon hangs low, swollen and quiet. Stars blink gently as if nodding in approval. The fields lie still. The trees murmur to themselves. Somewhere, an owl asks a question it doesn't want answered. You step onto the stoop, arms folded. The wood creaks beneath you, not judging, just noting. You stare at the sky and think. Not deep thoughts, not the kind philosophers bottle and sell. Just gentle ones. Did the cabbage grow today? Did the goat learn shame? Will it rain tomorrow? You breathe in. Cool night air fills your lungs like clean fabric. You breathe out. The day leaves with it. Final medieval tidbit. People once believed night air caused illness. Bad humors rising with the dew. Windows were shut tight, doors locked, even if it meant unbearable stuffiness. Then again, they were also sleeping in one-room homes with livestock, mud, and one shared blanket. So bad air might have been the least of their problems. You chuckle softly. The dog lies curled by the door, snoring in short apologetic bursts. You sit beside him, scratch behind his ears. He sighs. You do too. 3 final thoughts drift through your head. If stars are old light, is the sky just medieval memory? How many turnips equal a good day? Does the goat know your name? You rise, stretch. Your joints sing a soft, creaky song. You head inside, bolt the door, add one last log to the fire. You lie down on the straw mattress. It rustles, welcoming you home like an old friend with questionable hygiene. You pull the rough blanket over your shoulders. The fire flickers, the cottage settles, and sleep quiet and humble arrives like a peasant at your door, uninvited but welcome. So here you are, one full day in the muddy, modest boots of a medieval farmer. You plowed, you milked, you got chased by a goat, and through it all, you endured with quiet stubbornness and a suspicious amount of onions. Not every day in history is about kings and battles. Sometimes it's about soup and fences and turnips shaped like existential questions. So thank you for walking these slow, dusty hours with me. Rest now. Tomorrow's field will still be there. And the goat probably will too. That's the story for tonight. May your dreams be filled with wonder and peace.